least until the next board meeting.
Okay. Everyone understand?
Mayor, do we have to adjust the motion on I-4? Or does that get tabled and then a motion? I'm not sure what the procedure on that is.
Also the motion regarding that piece.
Oh, you're going to do it when we get to that piece?
That was what the village manager suggested.
Okay. All right, so this we when we come to it.
Okay.
Oh, we're still.
So,
We have a first and a second.
Okay, so, Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Trustee Kazmino?
Aye.
Trustee Rogers?
Aye.
Trustee Suisse?
Aye.
Trustee Varian?
Aye.
Trustee Holtz?
Aye.
Trustee Gray?
Aye.
All right, motion carries. Approval of minutes. Is there a motion to approve the February 5th, 2019 and February 8th, 2019 closed session minutes, both of which shall remain sealed until further board consideration and approval to release?
Yes, so moved.
Trustee Suisse.
Second.
Trustee Gray. Is there any discussion? Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Trustee Rogers?
Aye.
Trustee Suisse?
Aye.
Trustee Varian?
Aye.
Trustee Kazmino?
Aye.
Trustee Gray?
Aye.
Trustee Holtz?
Aye.
Okay, motion carries. Next, is there a motion to approve the minutes of August 28, 2019 Village Board meeting?
So moved.
Trustee Gray,
I will second.
Trustee Suisse, discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Ayes have it. Is there a motion to approve the minutes of September 11, 2019 Village Board meeting?
So moved.
Trustee Rogers,
Second.
Trustee Varian, discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Nay. Motion carries. Reports and communications from the mayor and other officers. Fall is a busy season in Homer Glen with many families, activities for residents to enjoy. The Fall Farm Fest in full swing with thousands of visitors each week. Please drive with extra caution due to the increased traffic pedestrians. Take time for the fall season in Homer Glen, and make sure you go by Conos and Banksy's. I'd like to go to the trustees. We'll start out with Trustee Gray.
Thank you, Mayor. I have no reports.
Okay. Trustee Holtz.
Just that the Public Services and Safety Committee has been begun the process of reviewing the speeding on Parker Road between 143rd and 131st Street. And we're going to be doing comparisons now that the actual radar signs that displays the speed of the driver will start being displayed, and compare that to what they call stealth, which was no display. And so we're looking forward to seeing what that's going to reveal. But I have witnessed a few myself, and it's kind of alarming how fast people go down that stretch of road, considering it is a residential area. So that's about it.
I'd also like to bring up one. We had an accident on 167th and Southville Road the other day where it tees off, and the car got T-boned and then pushed into a ditch. They flattened on that street too. The hill from the east, by the time you look west and you turn back, there's a car. So,
Agreed.
we're going to set something up for that to be looked into. Trustee Ryan, no, Trustee Murray.
Thank you, Mayor. Reporting for Community and Economic Development. Two quick things. One, CED met last night. We had a good meeting with some feedback and recommendations that I think the board will be seeing on a potential branding RFQ we're looking at that we talked about. But it was a good meeting, and that'll be forthcoming. The second one is just a reminder, the rescheduled ribbon cutting for Tavern and Glen is this upcoming Monday, the 14th at 5 o'clock. So anyone that can join us would be great. And that concludes my report.
Thank you. Trustee Rogers.
No problem.
Trustee Kazmino.
No report, Mayor.
Thank you. Trustee Suisse.
No report, Mayor.
Next will be village clerk.
No report.
Next will be village attorney.
And no report.
Next will be public service and safety.
Yes, sir, just real quick. I wanted to explain why I'm unshaven real quick. Most of you know that twice a year the Sheriff's Department will donate to certain charities. The charity for this month for us is the COPS organization, and that stands for the Concerns of Police Survivors. And what they do is they help the family of a fallen officer to recover, be it counseling or outings or whatever type of support they need. And they also help the department to recover from the loss of an officer. So those of us that are participating donate to that charity, and they allow us to grow the beard for a month. So until, well, we'll say through Halloween, you're going to see unshaven deputies out on the street, and that's why. Okay? And you guys also kind of stole my thunder with the speeding. We're aware of the speeding complaints throughout the village, especially on Parker. Just know that the Sheriff's Department is watching, but for your own sakes, especially with it getting dark earlier, just patience, patience, patience. I know there's a lot of impatience on the road, none of you, of course, but other people, but try and drive as slow and calm and cautious as you can. Thank you, Mayor. That's all I've got.
Thank you, Lieutenant.
Yes, sir.
Next is the village manager.
No comment, Mr. Mayor.
Next would be public comment. All right, we do have a 3-minute limit on this, so we can keep the meeting going. First would be Ellen Elder.
Good evening, my name is Ellen Elder and I live on Helen Lane in Statler Ridge subdivision. My purpose in speaking this evening is regarding this proposed storm sewer improvements that will cause devastation and destruction to the driveway and front property of 3 residents on my block, including me. Last week I communicated to each of you via email the failure and transparency of communication regarding this issue. The facts are: 1. H.R. Green was the first to inform residents that devastation of driveways, landscape, and trees would occur as the village sought to solve the flooding issues in the area. 2. When questioned, the village referred residents to the official Homer Glen website, where an initial search yielded an inapplicable 2015 storm sewer project, and a second search an 18-page proposal lacking in specifics. 3 days ago, I was informed you would be voting tonight. As a resident and stakeholder in this project, the lack of communication regarding this issue was a failure, one which I hope no other resident will have to experience. Communication goes both ways. When the village asked me to complete a survey for planning, I'm probably the first one to fill it out and return it. The village has a dual responsibility. All that being said, at this time, I urge and beg the village that when this project begins, you will do everything in your power to minimize the massive mess and inconvenience this project will cause to the daily lives of the 3 homeowners in the subdivision that will have their property destroyed. Too often, construction companies destroy large sections and then let a project sit unattended for days and weeks without completing any work. That would be a worst-case scenario. Efforts must be made to minimize the impediments to normal daily life while this construction is going on, and the village must provide the oversight to make that happen. Here are my personal concerns in question. My mother is an octogenarian and has medical issues that require us to be able to get in and out of the driveway with the car for medical appointments. Will we have access in and out of the driveway on a daily basis? This year we've had to call an ambulance to the house so we'll be able to access her if needed. We just purchased a new Honda CR-V. Given the recent hail damage in the area, this investment, a purchase I would have postponed had I known your intentions, must be garage stored. Is that going to be possible? What about snow removal? Will we be able to snowplow an area that has been devastated? If the affected area is simply gravel over which a snowblower is ineffective, is the village planning to plow the affected demolished areas for us? In conclusion, the village needlessly created a communication nightmare by not sharing the plan, the updates, and erroneously leading residents to a website that had nothing on it as regards this issue. Homer Glen can do better, and I hope they will never subject their residents with needless concern again. Finally, consideration must be given to minimize the impediments to normal daily life that will affect the 3 families who will experience the most destruction, and the village must provide the vigilant oversight of the construction company to make that happen. Thank you.
Thank you. I've got your phone number here, so we'll have someone contact you so they can give you an update on that.
Thank you.
John Boyd?
It's been a while. It's so much fun. The pictures I just gave, trustee, is strictly something that happens mostly in my area, but I also know it does happen all around the village of Homer Glen and Homer Township. Our subdivision is from 1973. I have the plat survey here, which I've given everybody up on the board a copy of it. The plat survey says that the road that this bike trail starts in a, on our entrance to our subdivision. Now, the street coming in is a right-of-way road, like all other streets that are on private property. Now, according to what I have here, ordinances established and standards for the construction of facilities on a right-of-way. You go down about 5 or 6 paragraphs. Whereas the public right-of-ways within the village are limited to public resources held in trust by the village, and for the benefit of the citizens of the village, and as custodial duty to ensure the public rights-of-way are used, repaired, and maintained. They've been mowing the grass on both sides. The township, now all of a sudden, Pam Meyer says, we no longer would do it, our insurance doesn't cover us. I can't see 48 years be doing something and then all of a sudden say, well, our insurance don't cover us. I've been doing it now for the last 2.5, 3 years, but I'll tell you, a couple of years ago, I've had 11 or 12 major operations. And well, when doing it this last time, I just got sick and I says, I ain't doing it no more. I fell down, I couldn't hardly move for a week. But anyway, I landed on the wrong part of my spine, but I've already had 3 operations. Plat of survey, it's got on there right away. Now right here, that first page says the village is actually responsible for it. Now whether the township says it's not on township property. They're full of it. Underneath them high tension lines is township property. But the village abuts right up to it, and the village's bike trail stops there. But it doesn't stop there. Cars pull in there, they pull out of there. I mean, it's an eyesore for anybody. You know, you just sit there. Now another, here's another one in here. Whereas the corporate authorities of the village find and determine that it's necessary in the best interest of public health, safety, welfare, and establish uniform standards, regulations, and access and use of the public right-of-ways. The village, by utility service providers and other persons and entities that desire to place structures or equipment in the right-of-way to make sure they do not have interference with the use of the trees, the sidewalks, and
You're at 3 minutes.
and all the rest of that. But anyway, there's 3 different spots in here that it says the village is responsible for that property. Now, whether you want Pam Myers to take over or not, I mean, I'm up to here with trying to, negotiate what can be done and what can't be done. So if I hire somebody to mow that, I'm going to tell them, if something happens to them, sue you. That's all I can say. Other than I will stick with whoever gets hurt in there, if somebody ever does, and I hope they don't.
Thank you, John. Next, Richard Kavanaugh.
Mayor, all passed.
Okay. So Gavidas is going to pass too?
Yes.
Jay Gradovich.
I signed in to speak on an action item there.
Okay. Jay, which one is this on now?
On the second one, under action items, number 2.
Yeah, so I do,
Okay. No, when that comes up. Chris Kowalski.
So, this is the picture of my backyard. This is what I have to look at every single day. So our built garage is 1,400 square foot. I was here at the meeting before. They said that was too big. There's already a garage in my subdivision that's 1,500 square foot. And the way I want to place this garage is going to be 50 feet behind my house. So it's really going to be tucked away. There's no neighbors behind me at all. So nobody's going to see it. My neighbors to the left see that. My neighbors to the right see that. So obviously I don't think anybody of you guys going in your backyard want to see a garbage pile. I think they would rather see a nice, beautiful garage that actually matches the house and everything like that. I also have vehicles that are large. The 1,000 square foot garage will not allow my cars to fit. I mean, if they do, there's no room for air to park. And you guys also have I emailed Melissa and VJ, you guys got pictures of the layout in the garage, how tight it is for a 1,000 square foot garage. I don't think you guys want to see all those vehicles in my driveway. So I think with the hail damage that just went through, I got a classic car, I got expensive cars, I got cars with tools in it that are very expensive. I don't want that just sitting in the driveway because I have a 1,000 square foot garage that I can't fit a car in. So what's another 10 feet back with a 40? It's already 40 by 25. What's another 10 feet back? It's not going to affect anybody here in the backyard, anything, and I can fit my cars comfortably. It won't affect anybody, and it's going to look a lot better than that junk pile that I have to look at. And I do want to put trees and everything to make that look beautiful so my neighbors don't have to look at it. I bought this house a year ago, exactly September 28th. I got an acre for a reason, because this is what I want to do. I moved into Homer Glen for the schools for my kids. I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to be here for the next 30, 40, 60 years, if I make it that long. But besides that, I'm not going to be parking my cars in the street. If you guys were my neighbors, I don't think you would want to see all these cars on the street. I think you would prefer all my cars being hidden away in a nice garage that you can look at and be like, hey, this is actually legit. This is really nice. Like I said, there's a neighbor already has a 1,500 square foot garage. He's a little block away. I know you guys are Homer Glen. He's in Will County, which is a really weird subdivision. But it's only about, I don't even know how many houses, but it's a block away, 2 blocks away, and it's not like it's a mile away, 2 miles away, or a different part of Homer Glen. It's literally down the street. I walk with my kids and I see his garage. So if he has one in the open, it's a corner house, why can't I have mine in 50 feet back towards nobody? So if 2 neighbors saw it. And
You are at 3 minutes.
Okay. Well, I think it's just ridiculous to look at that kind of pile and not a beautiful garage.
So we figured out, we'll ask you some questions.
Thank you.
Joe Lazar? Jason? Joel? Rich Vanessa? Heidi,
good evening, good evening everyone. I've been waiting for so long to get this permit, which is, to be honest with you, I didn't need this permit at all because I proved that I was not changing the usage. And I'm in business, and I've been in business for a year and 2 months already. Now I want to take this opportunity to inform Mr. Sagas, the owner of HGA, of a permit I got from the city to do my fence on the back. I can't because he's got his equipment there. He's got 20 feet according to the ordinance, according to his lease. And a lot of pictures were sent to Mr. Casey that he's been violating his ordinance of the city. I just want to do some wall arts on the front so I can separate both units so I don't have to be through problems with anybody. And I just want to do my fencing in the back. That's all. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. That's it for public comment. Next, we're going to go into the consent agenda. All matters listed under the consent agenda are considered routine by the village board and will be enacted by one motion. Is there a motion to approve the following items? 1, the approval of the accounts payable for the period of September 27th, 2019 through October 10th, 2019 in the amount of $136,952.49. 2, the Village of Homer Glen's August legal bills from Mahoney Silverman Cross LLC in the amount of $4,365. 3 we're taking a pass on. 4, pay estimate number 8 from Patton Construction, Inc. for the 2017 Drainage Improvement Project number 2, various locations in the amount of $10,000. And number 5, pay estimate number 4 from Alicio and Sons Company for the Heritage Park Detention Basin and Bioswale Project in the amount of $287,669.94. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Trustee Gray,
Second.
Trustee Casbino. Discussion? Madam Clerk, could you please call the roll?
Trustee Holtz? Aye. Trustee Rogers?
Aye.
Trustee Suisse?
Aye.
Trustee Varian?
Aye.
Trustee Cosentino?
Aye.
Trustee Gray?
Aye.
Motion carries. Legislation and action items. Number 1, is there a motion to approve the attached proclamation declaring October as Oaktober, Oak Awareness Month in the Village of Homer Glen?
I so moved.
Trustee Suisse. Trustee Casbino. Figured I'd give you a little. Okay.
Everybody, thanks for making it in. Oak ecosystems have been a significant part of the Illinois landscape for more than 5,000 years and are now in the state of decline across the entire state of Illinois. The state tree of Illinois is the white oak. Illinois forests, woodland, and savanna communities have been greatly reduced statewide, and the remaining oak ecosystems are declining in health due to the decline of oak dominance. These threats and declines are due to lack of public awareness, impact of invasive species, poor management practices, and reduced resources. Oak ecosystems in Illinois provide needed food and support for native insects and wildlife. Oak trees and their companion species contribute to important native biological diversity. Research has shown that oak trees and forests improve our air and water quality, human health, social and economic well-being, provide jobs and revenue, and improve the overall quality of life for all citizens across all neighborhoods and community boundaries. The Illinois statewide Forest Resource Assessment and Strategy identifies the loss of oak ecosystems as a critical issue for health of forest resources in Illinois and acknowledges the significant decline of oak dominance, the predominant forest type in Illinois, the change in forest landscapes, the decrease in forest health, and a significant need to teach the mechanics of oak regeneration, protect oak woodlands, and preserve our Illinois natural heritage.
The Illinois Wildlife Action Plan identifies the quality of wooded habitats in Illinois a major concern and the need to understand and manage oak decline in the state. Awareness of the threat and impacts of the oak ecosystems is an important first step towards behavioral change and an opportunity to engage citizens to protect and improve the health and services of our oak ecosystems and natural resources overall. Oak Awareness Month is an opportunity for government to join forces with business, industry, conservation groups, recreational groups, community organizations, and citizens to take action to support our native oak ecosystem. Now therefore be it proclaimed by the Mayor and the Board of Trustees of the Village of Homer Glen that October 2019 is recognized as Oaktober, Oak Awareness Month in the Village of Homer Glen, Will County, Illinois.
Thank you, Justice Reese. Is there any other discussion? Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Trustee Varian.
Aye.
Trustee Pedrino.
Aye.
Trustee Gray.
Aye.
Trustee Holtz. Trustee Rogers.
Aye.
And Trustee Suisse.
Aye.
Motion carries. Next, is there a motion to approve ordinance number 19-043, an ordinance approving a special use permit to allow other motor vehicles related uses, including yeah.
We're on I-2. I think you're on I-4.
Oh, okay. Flip it up too much. Is there a motion to approve ordinance number 19-045, an ordinance approving a site plan for a parking lot addition for certain real property located in the C1 Neighborhood Commercial District at 12627 West 143rd Street, Homer Glen, Illinois. Recommended conditions: 1, prior to the issuance of the building permit, the applicant shall provide staff a copy of the following for approval and will be required to have these items recorded with Will County. A cross-access agreement. B, lease agreement for the parking. Case number HG 1920-S.
I so move.
Trustee Suisse.
Second.
Trustee Rogers. Discussion.
I've go to this orthodontist and there definitely is no parking. There's times where people will actually park on the road the entry road that goes into Modell along the side there. I've never done no management services or anything going on, but I would imagine it's not ideal, but they do need more parking there.
Agreed, when there's the overlap into Modell during a large service, there is certainly an issue there. So it's good to see two businesses, neighboring businesses work together and or come to an agreement on a cross-access. And I hope this is an example for other areas in town where we like to see some more cross-access between developments or businesses. So kudos to these two businesses for working together.
Yeah, I'd like to echo Trustee Varian's sentiment. It reminds me of our last meeting when we approved Good Life up by Pelican Harry's in the same situation, where they acknowledged that, during the evenings they won't be using their parking facilities, and that they were certainly open to and okay with sharing with the rest of the development. So it is nice to see some of those businesses working hand in hand in some of these impacted areas, as well as we go forward on 109th Street. We're going to have some of these issues where people are going to lose their access ways that they've had for years and enjoyed, and we may now be going into shared access ways. I believe Trustee Pedrino is familiar with that. So it is nice to see that, and figuring out how plans work. So.
Did you want to speak?
No, I'm just here to answer questions.
Oh.
If there are any questions.
Okay.
You are going to have all of these things lined up, though?
Yes, everybody's lined up to go. It's good. I'll be in tomorrow for permit.
Any other discussion? Okay. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Trustee Pedrino.
Aye.
Trustee Gray.
Aye.
Trustee Holtz.
Aye.
Trustee Rogers.
Aye.
Trustee Suisse.
Aye.
Trustee Varian.
Aye.
Thanks, Jay.
Okay, thank you all.
Is there a motion to approve ordinance number 19-046, an ordinance approving, 1, a variance to increase the maximum size of an accessory structure from 800 square feet to 1,000 square feet for certain real property located in the R2 single-family residential zoning district at 14945 Glen Crest Lane, Glen, Illinois. and a variance to increase the maximum height of the accessory structure from 15 feet to 16 feet for certain real property located in R2 Single Family Residential Zoning District at 14945 Glencrest Lane, Homer Glen, Illinois.
So moved.
Trustee Holz,
I'll second.
Trustee Solis. Mr. Kowalski, do you want to come up for this one?
Yes.
So this way, if they have any questions, you can ask them for.
I have a question.
Sure.
Actually, it's for VJ. Do we have a copy of the letter that was discussed at the planning commission hearing from the neighbor, the one neighbor that complained or spoke against? Because that was the only one, right?
I'm sorry?
The only neighbor that
Yeah,
was against. Do we have a copy of the letter because it wasn't given before?
I can remember five. Give me 1 second.
Mr. Kowalski, are you aware of that letter?
Oh, yeah. And I'm also aware where she lives because she's not even going to see the garage. It's actually going to be on the other side of my property. So there's 3 houses that she has a break before she even sees my house. So I really was worried. The only way she's going to see it if she drives by. And then, like I said, if she drives by, you really have to look because it's 50 feet behind my house. If it was in the front of the house, I would maybe understand what she has a complaint with. But it's 50 feet behind. It won't be in my backyard.
And there was reference to doing research as to why some of the lots in the subdivision are part of the village and some aren't. Do we have more information on that?
Say that again?
It was referenced in the packet that some parcels of the homes there are not part of the village of Homer Glen, and so they have non-conforming structures.
Yeah.
So do we have more information on that?
No, they're pre-existing, prior to 2001, and some properties are unincorporated, so they're a mix of different size of garages.
Do we have any like photographic information on those?
Oh yeah, there was, actually in your packet, there's a map. So if you look at attachment 1, that kind of shows the yellow is in the village, the rest is unincorporated, which is on the screen too. So the subject property at the bottom on the south end, and the garage, the 1,500 square feet garage, that was the reference, is at the northwest corner of Cedar Glen and West Glenwood, northeast corner of Cedar Glen and West Glenwood, which is in the county with the star.
Yeah, I don't have those pictures on my.
It should be in your packet, it's attachment 1.
Look at this. Yeah, I didn't get the example of the detached garage at 1498. Let's see,
This case reminds me similar to the one that we've had fairly recently on South Bell Road with the family who, all of the brothers, everybody worked in the same company. So they all had 3 white trucks, 3 white vans, which one I'm talking about on South Bell Road. And they had all these cars, and the cars were all parked in front. But I just didn't see where it qualified for a variance because there were so many cars.
That was not a true hardship.
Right. I would agree with the planning committees on the 200 feet. I think it's going to look like a nice building. I think to almost double the size is excessive just because he has too many cars.
Well, you're not really doubling anything.
Well, 800 to
That's 16. So you're not doubling.
almost.
Almost.
Did you say you were willing to do 1,200?
The 1,000's not going to work for me. I'm going to tell you that right now. And with the patio, the garages you see, you got my one truck is 21 feet. You're talking about 25 feet with the shelvings and the walls in and everything.
Right.
You got 6 inches to park. I mean, how?
But were you willing to do 1,200?
honestly,
I'm not trying to.
yes, I'm willing to do 1,200, yes. But if I'm doing 12, what's another 5 feet back? And another, 5 feet. We're talking about another 5 feet, which is going to be towards that property, which is going to be with the garbage.
I understand.
So,
I would
yeah.
look at that either.
Yeah.
And to reference what Trustee Rogers mentioned, that House and Bell Road, which the variance was denied, and now we are still looking at those trucks parked up front.
And do you guys like those?
No.
Okay.
Your existing house has a garage?
Yes, but it's in the side. And it's a 2-car, 1.5 by 2-car garage. And all everybody in the subdivision has a 3-car garage, or 3-car garage and a detached garage.
Personally, I'm okay with the plan commission's recommendation. Your 1,400, my house is not even 1,400 square feet, so, I mean, that's how large that would be. So I'm not in favor of increasing that.
Is there any other questions, or?
The site, the visual you gave us that you're viewing every day, that is the temporary holding area for Jubilee right now, right, where they're doing the temporary concrete and everything?
No, that's a template.
That's a business.
Yeah, that was, I thought that was, the Jubilee piece.
On this yellow diagram, which house is the one that the letter came from?
Neighbor?
It's the corner house to the left, across the street from mine. Mine's the highlighted one in the middle, bottom.
So if I'm looking out your front porch, it's
It's not my front neighbor, not his neighbor, but it's that neighbor,
to your left.
to my left, correct.
To your right or to your left?
To my left,
Okay.
so you're right.
The corner?
Yeah, it's the corner one.
I'd be fine with 1,200 square feet.
I'll be fine with that.
Is anybody else willing to support 1,200 square feet? We can amend.
That's almost double.
The, TJ, the property behind him
Yeah.
with the cement mixer and all that, is that all,
Will County?
That's unincorporated Homer Township.
but that's fronting, 159, right? So is that all C3 or is it I, industrial, what is that?
It's commercial in Lake County.
Yeah, I would have no problem. If you amended your motion, I would go along with 12, I think. As long as it's for that.
I'd like to amend the motion to approve it for a 1,200 square foot garage.
Second?
No, you have to take it off the table first, so whoever did the first and second
Actually,
has
no,
to approve.
they made a motion, so I amended
It's
it.
her motion.
And
You just need to amend the second, which is Sharon.
You can withdraw your second, Sharon.
to withdraw, I don't. And if you don't, what happens? We stay with what the motion says. Motion passes. Well, I'm not gonna withdraw.
And the motion is off the table right now.
No, there's still motions on.
Well,
So
we have a motion, but we don't have a second.
We have a motion.
The original
So it's
motion.
still out there, passes motion.
All right, so they can approve it at the federal or the time.
Can I ask you why?
I don't believe there's a hardship.
I'm sorry?
I don't believe it qualifies, the variance qualifies, you would have hardship.
A hardship meaning what?
Because you
what's
have
that?
too many snowmobiles or too many trucks and stuff, and it doesn't qualify as a hardship. I mean, I'm empathetic to you because I would love to have a building like this on my property as well, and I have 2.5 acres, and I wouldn't qualify either.
See, a variance is for a true hardship. This is either a want or a wish. You know, it's not a true hardship, and that's what a variance is for, and that's what.
I'm paying $10,000 in taxes. I bought an acre for a reason. Now, if you guys decide not to do, you know, whatever you guys decide on, then I could also go and we'll try to go unincorporated. And then I'll put up a 1,500 square foot garage, because that's what the neighbor did a year and a half ago. And I don't understand why it's 200 square foot is such a big deal from somebody that I'm trying to improve the subdivision, trying to keep it clean. So, and people that are looking at it, I had signatures that are in the package, should be from my 3 neighbors that will allow, and they're looking at the garbage just like I am. But I guess you guys, you not in there. If you were looking at that, put yourself in that shoes. If you were in the backyard looking at that garbage, would you rather look at that or would you rather look at a nice building?
Well, I would put up trees.
Well, then you wouldn't see my garage, so it wouldn't really affect you if I did have a 2,000 square foot garage then, because you would have trees. So what's the difference?
I'm just saying I'm going with the recommendation this time for the plan commission, because I think 1,000 feet is more, you know, more than enough.
And do you see how the 1,000 feet, how is my truck supposed to fit in 1,000
Yeah,
foot?
I understand you just have the panel top. So, you know, you're making it sound like it's a semi.
Yes, it's 21 foot by 49 foot, and it's 10 feet tall. So so you want me to park, you want me to have 6 inches in front of my truck and 3 inches behind my truck to close the door. And and that's what you're asking me to park my vehicle in every single day for the next 30 years with 2 or 5 inches to spare with. Come on, be a little bit more realistic on that. At least give me that 1,200 that I could actually park my vehicle and maybe scooch my butt over it and I could walk around my vehicle like a normal human being.
All right, Sharon, are you going to,
Well, let the board vote on what they want. I'll take it back. I'm not going to do 1,200, but we'll compromise and do 11.
It's
like, let's make a deal.
Here's my quandary. I feel like there's stuff that should have been included in the packet that is not. And while you bought the property, what, a year ago?
I bought it a year ago and it was supposed to be unincorporated. Supposed to be.
And I can understand that, because I was told a lot of stuff by my realtor too. So, that being said, you know, you had that view, right? And in fairness, if we were buying that property, even if it's not going to be that business in the future, it's going to be something commercial. And I don't necessarily have a problem with a 1,200 square foot garage. It's a beautiful building. I think your plans are great. I think we need to have more of an open mind. And I think what constitutes a hardship is different to everybody. So while I did motion to approve this, there are things that were not included in the packet that I feel should be. And I don't know. I would like to withdraw my motion if that's legally possible. And I'm not sure, but at this point, I don't feel like we have enough time to really go over the things. I mean, nobody else in this subdivision commented on it. I mean, if the neighbors on either side don't have a problem with it, I'm not sure why the neighbor on the corner that won't even see it has a problem with it.
Are you okay if we start tabling this till the next meeting, so we can do a little bit more on our side, or is this something that your timeline is?
I was
tonight?
hoping so I could start pouring the gravel, figuring it out, so it sits over the winter time. So when it is,
Yeah, we're talking 2 weeks.
yeah, I can do it too.
That's okay? I think
I could be fair with you guys. I could give you another 2 weeks, and that's not a problem. Just let me know what you guys need from me.
I'm going to amend my motion to table this discussion until the next meeting so we can get a little bit more. I think we can get the information we need.
You're okay with the table?
Yes.
All right, so thank you.
Is there anything you guys need from me in the meantime in those 2 weeks?
We'll let you know.
Oh, so that's it?
Yeah.
Thanks for your patience.
Yeah, I'm
Thank you.
amending my motion to table this until the next meeting.
all right,
I'll second.
all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? motion for consideration. Is there a motion to approve ordinance number 19-043? An ordinance approving a special use permit to allow other motor-related vehicles, uses including automobile, semi-trucks, repairs, service, semi-truck sales, consistent with the special use of the C3 General Business District for certain real property located in the C3 General Business District at 15761 Nico Drive, Unit A, Homer Glen, Illinois, subject to the conditions stated in the ordinance HWM, truck maintenance, case number HG 1915 SJ.
Mayor, I'd like to make an alternate motion. I move to remand back to the Planning Commission for a new public hearing requesting for special use to allow other motor vehicle related uses, including 1, automobile and semi-truck repairs and services, and 2, semi-truck sales, consistent with other special uses in the C3 General Business District for certain real property located in the C3 General Business District at 15761 Anico Drive, Unit A, Homer Glen, Illinois, HWM truck maintenance, case number HG 1915-S.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Ayes have it, it's remanded back to the Planning Commission. Okay. Number 4, number 5. Is there a motion to appoint trustees Brian Durian, Beth Bridges as village board liaisons to the Heritage Parks Schematic Design Team?
So moved.
I need a second. Trustee Sweet, discussion?
Yeah, at the last meeting, I spoke about wanting it to be a rotating situation where all the trustees could alternate. And you also mentioned making meetings public, but that's not reflected in this, so I would like some reassurance that the meetings will be public, that we can all attend, or it will be rotating.
Mr. Mayor, my recommendation, I recommend that they not be made public at this time. It's similar to the construction progress meetings that were held over the last year. There's a lot of things that are discussed. It's a very short timeline. The turnaround as in their scope is basically 60 days, 2 months to get back to us. And there's a lot of things that have to be discussed. I think all those things are important. We commit that we will keep the board apprised, as we already have begun the process, and getting input and gathering input from all of you. But in order not to slow down the process and have to require the public notifications and posting and minutes and all those things, I'm recommending that they not be public at this time.
And this is not a committee, correct? It's just a...
No, this is just a ad hoc group that's going to be working on finalizing information that's coming back and forth between TRIA, staff, and the board in both directions, communication both ways. So my commitment, though, is that we will make sure that you are aware. We will take minutes of those meetings and we will share those with all the trustees. But I am requesting that it not be an actually published public meeting.
And the reason for that is just so for logistics, right? So that
Yes.
you can on the fly plan meetings and everything. There's no
Absolutely.
opacity here. Keeping
There's no
anything from the
various, intent behind
This is
this.
just the ability to be able to get together quickly as an ad hoc group to go over the plans.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
So to Trustee Holtz's sensitivity about that, can we add in there that maybe once we transition from the design phase over to any future construction phase, maybe we revisit this and we reappoint, and maybe it'll be the same people reappointed, maybe it'll have a different complexion at that time. Right?
Thank you, I appreciate that. And I feel that I understand the desire to have them not be public when it comes down to the construction phase, but I don't necessarily understand the desire to have it be not public during the design aspect. And you and I discussed having this being public for transparency's sake.
Village manager doesn't feel that if you bring the public in right now, that the way we had it the last time, everything ran smooth. We will have updated form. Everything's working out there right now. And I don't want it to where we have a rotating, because then we're chasing 6 people. And I don't want to chase 6 people.
I would agree. The rotation right now is going to be trying to, herd kittens or 1,000 points of light. I think having 2 steady bodies on there for the design phase is a good idea, especially with the reassurances that they'll keep us all in the loop. I do, it's funny that to hear Trustee Holt say that about the design being open meetings and this construction being closed, because I feel absolutely the exact opposite of that. Because design is really kind of a fluid thing, and construction is where you're spending money, and that's really where I would want to put the emphasis on having open, if we're going to have them open to the public and have dedicated meetings with an agenda and, published, I'd rather have it on the construction side when there's actual money being spent and, whether or not we're adhering to those plans. So it's just...
I agree, because this way you've got all the trustees there at the same time, reporting on what you're going to be doing. I think that what has happened is gone smooth. When we did the Village Hall, we did the exact same thing. There were 2 of us, and we reported back to the trustees. So I would like it to stay just the way it is right now, and as soon as it does convert from this to the building end of it, we'll open it up to the public.
Mayor, just got one quick question, new bank. So we have the ad hoc, I don't want to say committee, but the group that gets together, that would be Trustee Berry and Rogers. So basically, they would get together with construction people, they would report back to us as a board, no decision will be made during this time, or how does that work?
I can answer that question if you will allow me, Mr. Mayor. So, the deadline for the design schematics with the additional phase that you guys added at the last board meeting is basically a 2-month turnaround. That's the target date. So we have a very short timeline. So how I envision this happening is we will have conversations. It may be via phone. It could be a telephone conference call. It could be an in-person meeting. It could be whatever we need to as TRIA and is working on these design schematics based on the input that we received from all of you already, the survey, the visual preference things that I've asked you guys to get back to us. We'll be looking at plans, we'll be running questions by us, we'll be asking for input, and those things we'll have to respond to and say, yeah, we think this is a way. Every time we have a meeting like that, we're going to take minutes, we're going to take notes of that meeting, and then I will email those out to all the trustees and say, this is where we're at with this particular part of this design. If there's information we need feedback from and we're not quite sure what the direction would be or the pleasure of the board, I will reach out to all of you, so will Beth and Ryan, to get your input, whether that's picking up the phone call, calling you, sending out an email, whatever the best way to communicate that information back. We have a very short time frame. And one of the things that I heard at the last board meeting was that you guys are very concerned that the project stay on schedule, that we don't want to see delays. And that is my goal, is that we are going to stay on schedule, and we will be back before you in 2 months with a presentation for all of you at a public meeting where you guys can have final input, final review. Nothing can be approved until it comes back to you guys. You guys have to look at the plans, you have to say yay or nay, I like them, and then you also have to ultimately decide which phase do you want to pick next based on these schematic designs that we want to get to actual construction drawings, so that we will be ready to go out to bid as was discussed at the last board meeting in the spring.
And I would like to make sure that the email goes out to everyone at the exact same time, so everyone's on the same page. No one's asking any questions. If they do, you've got it right in front of you, and we get everything taken care of at that time. This way it does keep it going, so
Thank you.
Appreciate it in the spring.
Mayor, one point just to add, I mentioned this at the last meeting, but maybe just to clarify again. When we talk about the 2 main projects we've had as a board, the Village Hall here, the renovation, and active core, in which we've had this sort of design construction teams, there has never been one design element, as these things go off for bid, that this board and led by the mayor hasn't signed off on. There's not a feature out in active core that the board at the time, I know it's changed since then, but the board at the time didn't approve every step of that, right? None of that is going to change. And that's an important point here. I think at times it's insinuated that there were things that were selected by you and I within this village hall, or Trustee Rogers and I on active core from a design standpoint, that somehow we made decisions. It's not true. And so when these bids are put out, we've all seen these bids. These are very detailed things. We've all been in these meetings when we've had these conversations, whether it was hammocks or other things out in active core. We've all been there for those conversations, and none of that's going to change. The board, with the mayor, has approved both of these projects. So I just think that's an important thing, especially for the public, that nothing within this building, that active core, was designed or bid out or part of the project that wasn't approved by the village board. And so I don't foresee that changing. I think there's sticking to a timeline and having been part of these meetings, whether design or construction. There are some of these meetings, and these meetings aren't at 7 o'clock at night. These meetings are oftentimes, for me, difficult to get to. Because most of them are during working hours when most of these professionals work. And there's conversations at times between, even on the construction phase, between contractor and where they're tough conversations of sitting on these people and making sure that they're being held accountable. So I just want to make sure we're on the same page there, that nothing, this process, active core, the building, nothing's ever been built, designed without full approval by everyone at this dais, whoever that happened to be at the time.
Thank you, Trustee Varian.
I have a question. So citing that, would Beth and Brian be willing to allow subs to be present in their absence?
That's what, I mean, we've always had two. That's why there was those two in case one couldn't go. There's never been a situation where two couldn't go. Having a sub is hard because you would have to catch some people up on certain things, but I would leave that up to the village manager.
I personally am not opposed to that.
Yeah.
Just knowing that there is a up to speed thing here. It's not just jump into a meeting. There are things that go meeting to meeting to meeting. So I'm not opposed to it. The other thing I would say from a practical sense is most times, I can tell you from experience, I can count on half of one hand the number of meetings I've missed since I've been a trustee, whether it's for any of these meetings or even for these board meetings, in which I knew days ahead of time, let alone, it's usually for me, it's within, and you guys know, it's sometimes a half hour before that I'm stuck in a meeting and just can't get here. So I'm comfortable with that, absolutely, just knowing there's a practical thing here that oftentimes there isn't enough heads up that I know, I'm speaking for myself, that I know I'm not going to be to a meeting. So while I'm comfortable with it, I just want that to be stated because there may be times where there's only one of us there because you're stuck in something and it's not a heads up.
Fair enough. To touch on what Trustee Rogers said, though, if we're all being kept informed as we are going to be, that shouldn't be an issue. Getting caught up.
I serve at the pleasure of the board, and this is a decision that the board has to make. I have selected the people who I feel from the village professional staff needs to be part of this. Those are my recommendations. I just wanted to make sure that I had clear direction who the people were going to be assigned to this. And I just want to make sure that we're able to stay on task and stay on time. That's my biggest concern. I have no qualms with who is appointed. I have no qualms with, I love y'all. I have no qualms with substitutions. That is purely at the pleasure of the board to make those decisions. I just need to know who's on it, and we're gonna take off for the races.
Okay. Well, right now it's going to be Trustee Varian and Trustee Rogers. If one of them can't make it to a meeting and they know it a couple days in advance, if they could give me a call, and I'll see if anyone else does want to step in, just so at least it's not all on one of you. So, as long as you guys are comfortable with that, I'm absolutely fine with it.
I think that's a great idea, Mayor, because it gives, even though like a sub doesn't have the input, at least it's a good learning experience to see what's going on firsthand. So I think, even if there's only a couple hours ahead of time, that somebody like if Trustee Variance stuck in a meeting, somebody else is available. I think it's a good experience to see what goes on
I agree.
to that.
I agree. All right, so Madam Clerk, could you please call the roll?
Trustee Gray?
Aye.
Trustee Holtz? My vote on this really doesn't matter, so I'm going to vote present.
You have to vote yes or no.
No, I'm vote present.
Okay.
Trustee Rogers?
Aye.
Trustee Suisse?
Aye.
Trustee Varian?
Aye.
Trustee Pasnino?
Aye.
Motion carries. Next, is there a motion to approve ordinance number 19-047, ordinance amending 83-68 of the Homer Glen Code, increasing the number of Class F liquor licenses issued within the village of Homer Glen. It is understood that the number of Class F liquor licenses, beer and wine, will increase by 1.
So moved.
Trustee Varian,
Second.
Trustee Gray, discussion. Or I can actually, this one here is for, well, we got to get this one passed first and move on to the next one. So is there any discussion on this? Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Trustee Holtz? Aye. Trustee Rogers?
No.
Trustee Suisse?
No.
Trustee Varian?
Aye.
Trustee Pasnino?
I abstain, I it's full liquor license.
Trustee Gray?
Aye.
It's 32.
So I believe it.
No, that's what you're
It's 3 to 2. Okay, that's right, she was staying.
Well, but he did change. He abstained,
All
so.
right, so,
So he does, you would need to have another vote. No.
okay, aye. He's got a liquor license, so we can't. All right, so, motion carries. Next, is there a motion to approve ordinance number 19-048, an ordinance assigning the available Class F liquor license, beer and wine retail sales to HGBC, Inc., located at 14226 South Bell Road, Homer Glen, Illinois. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Trustee Holtz,
Second.
Trustee Gray. What this is about right now is they have an 1,800 square foot restaurant.
Is it 18?
It's 1,800.
It is 1,800.
What they don't have is they don't have the distance from the school to the business. It's supposed to be 100 feet by our ordinance. But Jamie, I'll turn this over to you. You can.
Sure, a little bit more background. Previously, in state law, there was a requirement of location restriction. I'm going to simplify by just saying, since we're dealing with the school next door, it needed to be at least 100 feet from a school. There were other types of institutions as well. The state amended their law and removed that requirement at the state level. It was onerous, and they were looking actually to try to be more business friendly. They thought this was more of a local issue. And what that action did was it gave the opportunity for communities now to weigh in how they want to work with this topic at the local level. So when we did the comprehensive update of the liquor code during the summer, one of the amendments was to, it's section 83-72, location restrictions in our code, and it did not remove the 100-foot location restriction. However, it did add to the language that the board would consider a waiver of that location restriction for special circumstances. So you have to present a case of special circumstances. So The current applicant is located in the Jewel Center, also known as Summertown Square. They're located on that south wing between the Advance Auto Parts and the Fannie Mae. The fronts of the businesses are towards the east, and the rear doors are, which is closer to the school, is on the west side of the unit. And then there is a fence that is separating the properties. So that's the physical setup. And in the application, they did have a letter of request that the board consider this waiver, and stated the distance that it would take to basically walk from the school around to the front of the businesses. So that's the setup of background. You have the opportunity, because there is now language in the liquor code where you can consider a waiver for special circumstances.
Now, discussion with anyone here.
Yeah, I just want to say, I mean, we see the pictures in there, but for the audience's sake, there's a fence, and it's a K-4 school. Children are not allowed to walk away from the school. They either have to get on a bus or be picked up by a parent or a daycare provider. The intention is to keep children out of the liquor establishment. I don't see that there's even going to be a conflict there where a minor child will be in an establishment without a legal guardian or a parent. It's just logistically not something that's going to happen. They might go in there to buy chicken, but people are going to know who's 12 and 10 versus over 21, and if they're doing their job, they're carting. So I don't see there being an issue here.
Jamie, I remember that workshop pretty vividly. We were here pretty late, if I remember correctly. But I don't remember do you remember what the consensus of the board was at the time? I thought we had all pretty much gone over almost this entire case about the allowing for the special permit request to come forward.
For this particular?
Well, for this type of a situation.
This was discussed during the
workshop.
workshop. Yes.
Right. So there was almost a consensus at the board, and I know that the board has changed since then, but.
No, I agree with Keith, because I did participate in that workshop, and we talked about how that southern end of that particular plaza has had a vacancy issue. And I think not restricting that in this situation would help.
And really, if they were in advance auto spot, this would be a non-issue. I mean, essentially, right? They're
correct. The building
right. Yeah.
years away from the property. Right.
Okay, thank you.
I think this just goes back to the, I like the better word, not enough information in the packets. And then getting information 5 minutes before the meeting starts, switches everything around. I know there was quite a few of us that were very confused about it.
I look at this a few different ways. One, the school issue. My children go to the school. I'll get to the gaming part in a second, but my children go to the school. They've always been bused or picked up. This isn't a school in which lunch time is a free lunch and have the ability to walk the neighborhood. So I don't, this is one of those areas where I think the state changing this law on a case-by-case basis and giving the locals the authority to make these decisions has been a positive thing, because I do think it is on a case-by-case basis. I don't think proximity to a school is the same in every case. I think it depends on what the use of that school is. In this case, I'm comfortable with that. Two, the gaming side. I'm not, as most of you know, I'm not the biggest fan of gaming or the video poker. If it was up to me, this would still be limited mostly to bars and those types of situations, but that ship sailed. We have from what would be considered sort of a fast food, there's a sit down area there, but sort of liquor license being the same thing. We have existing businesses that are very similar uses, and in multiple places in which they already have a liquor license and gaming. So for me, it becomes a competitive disadvantage. Once we allow that, It's now a competitive disadvantage to say to near identical use restaurants that, no, sorry, right? So to me, while it's not my preference, I also know that I'm not wanting to tie the hands of people that have risked their, in some cases, I don't know about this case, but in some cases, their life savings to run a business. So the competitive disadvantage is reason 2 for me. And 3, there's a practical side here. That if we said no because of the school, which I think would be the most likely scenario because I think the use we already have in this town in similar establishments, the third one would be a practical standpoint, which is it is likely for someone like this in a corner of a development that we've had trouble, someone mentioned we've had trouble filling this corner. We are likely to have another opening. They're going to go find a location where they'd be able to do these things. So for me, it's the 3 sides. School, I'm okay with. The competitive disadvantage on something we've already allowed, and the practical standpoint. I don't know that we want to risk opening up another open space in an area that's been tough to fill and continues to be tough. So for those reasons, I'm not.
I don't think it's a great idea to have every little fast food joint in the village to have access to video gaming, because that's the bottom line. And as far as distance from the school, we're not drawing a roundabout circuit, circuit route. It's from point A to point B and not going around a fence or something like that. And that's what, that bothers me too. But, it's open. You're not going to be able to go back that every little Taco Bell, every little place that is 1,500 square feet. And if that's, that's the way the village wants to go, I don't think it justifies a liquor license in video gaming. I mean, I've been in there. It's hard to believe it's 1,800 square feet because it's so small up front, unless it's long in the back.
Well, the only ones that have it in the village right now are restaurants. Restaurants with a liquor license, minimum 1,500 square foot.
Is it full restaurant, right?
Mm-hmm. And like Trustee Variance said, we do have some buildings that are empty in that lot. And if we lost one, there's one more to fill up. And they've been here for 24 years. And I think they put in their time and spent the money.
I don't think Dominic's Plaza was here 24 or 5 years. 24 years ago already.
Another thing I'd like to say, Mayor, is that, these business owners, to Trustee Suisse's point about, do we want them everywhere? No. Do we want anything everywhere? Too much of anything is not good. But I think these business owners are savvy enough to make the case at the end of the year when they're tallying up their books and they've either made a profit or a loss. Those types of things are the things they're going to take out of their equation. If gaming or liquor is not pulling its own weight, there's an expense to that. There's $1,500 for a liquor license annual. There are, I believe it's $500 per game, plus the license again for just having the gaming. So there's a cost to all of that. So I think that the business people in our village are savvy enough. I think most business people that succeed are savvy enough to do those mathematics and those accountings, that at the end of the year they can say, you know what, gaming's really not pulling its weight. It's not worth me continuing to go and get a license and renew the individual seat every year if it's not bringing it in. So, while the competitive disadvantage, there also might be a reality to some of these as well. That they say this, we tried it just didn't work. And we've seen that where some of our local businesses have come in and they've modified the license that they had so that they could come in at a lower liquor license. They weren't serving the things they thought they were going to, and they were carrying a higher burden financially. So I put it back on the business people, like Trustee Durian said, the competitiveness of it, but they're realists too. They realize that money, if you cut it out, that's going right to your bottom line. That's not selling more chicken or more pizza or anything. That's a savings.
Correct. All right, is there any other Madam Clerk, could you please call the roll?
Trustee Rogers?
Aye.
Trustee Suisse?
No.
Trustee Varian?
Aye.
Trustee Pazmino?
Abstain.
Trustee Gray?
Aye.
Trustee Holmes?
Aye.
Motion carries. Is there a motion to accept the bid proposal from Len Cox and Sons Excavating to complete drainage improvements for projects 2 and 3A of the 2019 Drainage Improvement Program within the village of Homer Glen in the amount of $496,667.40?
I so moved.
Trustee Suisse?
Second.
Trustee Holmes? Discussion?
Well, I would just like to ask that when we have these projects coming up, as with people that during public comment were, chatting about a little bit, can we send out, even though we don't have a schedule yet, even if maybe in the bid process, even saying, giving them a heads up so they're not like all of a sudden, there's a surveyor out there or somebody doing things. Even if we don't, because, I was told, well, we don't have a schedule to tell them. Well, can't we just let them know that this is coming in the future so that people can be aware of, they don't always read social media and they don't go on the website, so they have no other way of knowing unless, like the lady said here, that she was wondering what were they doing out in front of her house surveying. Can we maybe, let people know or send out a postcard or something?
Yes, we can.
Just so, like big projects like that, if it's going to be tearing up so much of our area, I think that, it can help a little bit.
Yes, we can certainly get, notification out, when we're doing any kind of drainage studies, things of that nature.
Right.
Just to give heads up.
Yeah, we're thinking of doing this in your area in the near future so that they're kind of aware of what's happening.
I would say maybe a little more information, what if somebody was planning an outside wedding at their house? You know what I'm saying, really, and then they show up and the whole front yard is pulled apart.
Sure.
I think we need to be conscious of that. We ran into a couple of issues like that during public safety too, when somebody came home and all of a sudden there was a big, huge blinking light in their yard and they hadn't been told, and they have a realtor come to their house the next day. So I think we just have to be a little bit more detailed and letting them know, so that it'll be between this month and this month or something like that. I understand we can't get exact days, but something somebody's planning a big, huge graduation party or wedding party or something.
And we know enough in time that we can give them a heads up. Because I agree with what both of us just got done saying. We've got this young lady here that's just came in and told us that we're not giving them enough heads up, and we should be able to have it on the site so everyone can come into the village and see what we're going to be doing. So what do we?
But in all fairness, we didn't have any approved yet. So to put it up there before we approve it is.
No.
It hadn't been approved, but didn't we identify these
Yeah.
projects?
There's I in particular want to just apologize. I was the chair of public safety, which Trustee Holtz is now the chair, but I was the chair when we approved this. So sorry for that. I did not realize that those notifications were not going out. But we have a tally sheet that we were working off of, and there's like 30 different drainage projects throughout the village. And they were all being ranked on, life safety, on property damage, things of that nature. So they were all being assessed, and they were all given a certain amount of points. And the ones obviously with the higher points went to the top of the list, and the ones with less of those things went to the bottom of the list. So of those rankings of the 30, we were trying to, as a village, trying to take care of a couple of the top ones every couple of years as money became available. So this one came up, I believe it was last fall when we initially looked at it. We put it out to engineering services. But just recently I found out that listing of 30, and the village managers want to tell me about this, the listing, while I hope that we'll start sharing that online so that the residents can go on there and see that ranking and see maybe where their subdivision is. It used to be that the ones that got to the top were the ones that basically got taken care of. We're also now trying to work in conjunction with the road district and some of our own in-house staff to see if maybe we can get some of those bottlenecks taken care of as well. Some of the ones that are a little bit smaller, maybe a little bit more manageable and a little bit more financially able to just get in, get out, and get it done. So I would just put that word of caution out there that while you might see the ranking, we could be working from both ends of the list. So.
Okay. So, we're all good on that? Any other discussion? Okay. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Trustee Grazino?
Aye.
Trustee Gray?
Aye.
Trustee Holtz? Aye. Trustee Rogers? Aye. Trustee Suisse?
Aye.
Trustee Varian?
Aye.
Motion carries. Next, is there a motion to approve a professional service agreement from HR Green for the preparation of individual right-of-way and/or construction easement plans as part of the 151st Street widening project in the not-to-exceed amount of $33,000? It is understood that this comes out of the average cost of $750 for each of the 44 properties the village is seeking to acquire right-of-way and/or construction easements from. It is also understood that for those parcels where right-of-way and/or construction easements have not been obtained through this round of acquisition, there will be an additional cost for plans for those properties following IDOT requirements and approval. I need a motion.
So moved.
Trustee Gray.
Second.
Trustee Gazmino. Discussion.
I'd like to ask Director Salmovich, we had approved something a few years ago, and I'm not even sure, it might have predated me, so it might have been before 17, about the widening of 151st Street. And I thought I remembered that had included some right-of-way issues.
Yes, previously the board approved a contract with HR Green to complete the Phase 1 study for the widening of 151st Street. There were two approvals. The original project was, the limits were from Cedar Road to Parker Road, and then later on the section between Parker Road and Bell Road was added. So that, of course, included a topographical survey of the right-of-way and the ground so that they can come up with the plans, but that didn't include the separate parcels. At that time, there was they were developing what the proposed basically layout of the roadway improvement would be, so there was no way to know if any additional right-of-way was needed, and if so, what that right-of-way would necessarily be.
Is this motion tonight, is this for the actual acquisition of the rights-of-way and the easement, or is this just identification of them?
This would be just for the preparation of the actual plats of either right-of-way, easement, or both.
And just so I could add to that, Trustee Gray, we've already begun the process of reaching out to the impacted property owners up and down 151st Street so that we can acquire them through our normal village acquisition methods as opposed to having to do it through an IDOT procedure, because an IDOT procedure is very bureaucratic, it's very slow moving, and it costs a lot more money. So we're trying to get all the right-of-way tied up, and we need the plats in order to be able to show the property owners this is what we're going to be taking, and this is what, if there's a temporary easement or whatever needs to be included in that. So this is what HR Green is the design engineer of record. They'll be doing each individual plat. This is the money for them to do that, which one we will then get agreement based upon, and then all those will have to come back to the board for actual, the final acquisition and payment of those.
Thank you.
Okay. Is there any other discussion? Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Trustee Holtz? Aye. Trustee Rogers? Aye. Trustee Suisse?
Aye.
Trustee Varian?
Aye.
Trustee Grazino?
Aye.
Trustee Gray?
Aye.
Motion carries. Is there a motion to accept a performance bond in the amount of $510,213 in lieu of a letter of credit as financial security for Shorewood Home and Auto Development at the 13639 West 159th Street?
So moved.
Trustee Varian,
Second.
trustee Giordano, discussion?
I have a question. It says the collection of a performance bond would require the village to access funds through a bonding company, and you're going to have to wait longer for the money if something happened. Doing that through a bonding company, is there an additional, is there an additional costing to the village, or a certain percentage of this money that's being held?
Typically, it's a longer process, but there shouldn't be any additional cost to the village. It's just, there's a kind of a more detailed process. I mean, typically for, the smaller projects that the building department deals with, we get performance bonds for those projects. These are typically, we've required in our ordinance, our code states that we would require letters of credit from any developments. Obviously, the letter of credits are more beneficial to the village. They're easier to acquire the funds if for some reason the developer or contractor would default, but it is more costly for the builders or the developers.
Right, but I think when you said should not, because look, this is for like over $500,000, and even if there is just a small percentage, I mean, does the village, do we have to pay a percentage out of this money, where the village is actually losing money by doing a performance bond, especially when it's that large? That's what I was just curious, that's what I was curious about.
Trustee Sweets, I don't think it's a matter of us losing money. The money is going to be the same amount that we would want from letter of credit would be the bond, the dollar amount for the bond. The frustration that we have typically that you could see, which is the downside of a bond, is we have to go through the insurance company who holds the bond, and then they kind of want to review everything and talk to everyone, and it slows down the process. In the event we ever have to pull the bond and actually get the money for us to complete the public improvements. For a letter of credit, we just walk into the bank with a letter of credit, we get the money, and we go to town. So the downside of the performance bond is that it could take longer for us to get the money, but we would still get the money, and it's still the same dollar amount. The reason why they requested this is because they are actually doing a loan through the SBA, Small Business Association. And the way the SBA does their funding, they do not allow letter of credits. They only allow the performance bonds. And so that's why we brought it for you tonight for consideration. We agree from a staff perspective that we would prefer always to have a letter of credit. It's the best form of security we have for public improvements. But we recognize in this particular case, they did try to get the letter of credit. We've had a number of conversations staff has on trying to figure out a way where they could get the approval from the SBA for this. They simply couldn't do it. It was against the program requirements for the loan that they're getting.
Well, I just wanted to make sure, I understand that, but I just want, like, say, for example, in this case, it's $510,000, and like, say, something happened, and we had to pull that $510,000 through a bonding company. I want to make sure we get 510 and not 500, or something less. Okay.
Yeah, and I know we spoke about the performance bonds versus the letters of credit when we did the new retail development on 143rd and Bell Road.
Right.
And to me, one of the differences between these is that I think these businesses are going to be a little bit faster moving. They're going to be in, they're going to be done. We're going to know sooner. A 10, 12-year build out on a subdivision, I think, where you might want to know that day one and day last, that money is there as part of an LLC, guaranteed. No ifs, ands, or buts, looking back at 10 years of paperwork and everything when you're trying to make a claim. So I think for me, one of the things on a business, especially on 159th Street, once that thing is done, I think that is all going to be prime real estate up there anyhow. So even if something did happen, God forbid, with this developer, I think those are self-remedying subdivisions, as we've seen after 08, when several developers went out and left us holding the bag on some of those things. It could be a little more difficult to find those paper trails on something like that. So you want that almost guaranteed money in an LLC versus a performance bond. So that's just my point.
Is there any other discussion? Madam Clerk, could you please call the roll.
Trustee Rogers?
Aye.
Trustee Suisse? Aye. Trustee Varian?
Aye.
Trustee Fazanino?
Aye.
Trustee Gray?
Aye.
Trustee Holst?
Aye.
Motion carries. Next, we're going to a workshop item. Director of Planning and Zoning, V.J. Gotti, will discuss a comprehensive plan update, design guidelines for sustainability and development.
Yes, comprehensive plan consultants shortly. Before that, I would like to give a brief introduction. So this is part of the phase 4 work of the comprehensive plan. The intention of the workshop is to gather input on 4 core elements that are typically included in design guidelines. That includes conservation subdivision standards, tree preservation standards, landscaping standards, and streetscaping standards. So this workshop is for discussion and information gathering only. With that, I would like to turn it over to Todd, he's going to cover the first part of the presentation, followed by council-wide.
Great. Thank you, BJ. Thank you for having us again. As BJ mentioned, this is part of the comprehensive plan project. In addition to the overall comprehensive plan, which we met with the steering committee this afternoon for the 4th meeting, we are looking at 2 additional items. One, we met with you in August for the first time. We talked about the sign code. We actually presented an updated sign code to the steering committee this afternoon. That'll be going to Plan Commission and back to you as the village board in the next few weeks. And then the second item, in addition to the sign code, as Vijay mentioned, is development and sustainability guidelines for your community. As Vijay mentioned, the 4 items that will be part of that is conservation, subdivisions, tree preservation, landscaping, and streetscape. And I'm going to be giving you some general considerations to frame our discussion, and then I'll hand it over to Connor, and he'll be walking you through the different policy issues that we should be discussing to help frame how we want to update your standards. In terms of looking at sustainability and development, this has actually been pretty core and central to how Homer Glen has grown as a community even before you were incorporated. As you can see here, the little excerpt on the right is taken from your new resident welcome booklet, and it has 4 core values. You really want to accentuate your rural history, the concern for the environment, managed growth density, and responsible commercial development. This is several years old, but actually looking at today when we're updating your comprehensive plan, all 4 of these still hold today, and so they'll definitely be very essential to your sustainability development standards. In addition, we wanted to define what sustainability is so that we're all on the same page. In general, sustainability is defined as meeting the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their needs. So here you can see that oftentimes when we think of sustainability, we always think of the environment, but it also has physical and fiscal components to that. Obviously today a lot of it will be considered about environmental and especially about your conservation design ordinance, but we just wanted to make sure that we are working on the same definition of what sustainability is. And then you may ask yourself, why are we addressing the design guidelines during the comprehensive plan process? For one, it ensures that when you do have your policies in place, that they support what the final recommendations from the comprehensive plan will be, especially the future land use plan. You want to make sure that any policies you have in place will help advance anything that comes out of the recommendations from the comprehensive plan. It will also help guide village staff and the work they do in terms of guiding mixed use and plan unit developments here in Homer Glen. And it's also a tangible reflection of the quality of life here at Homer Glen. It's something that's been very true to the identity of the community here. And some final general considerations is more statistics to keep in mind as we continue the discussion. In terms of land use, almost half of your land use is devoted to single-family residential, it's about 47%, and about 3.6 or less than 4% is devoted to multifamily residential. Of that 47% for single-family, 89% of that is for single-family detached homes, which is pretty common as you look through your community. And then non-residential, commercial is only 3%. Typically, a community has about 10% devoted to commercial. So here in Homer Glen, it's about a third of what you would normally see. In the table you see in the middle of the frame, or in the slide, just some demographics. Comparing Homer Glen to Will County as a whole, your median age is 42.3. That's almost 9 years more than Will County, which is only 33.3 for median age. In terms of median household income, it's about $97,000 here in Homer Glen compared to only $80 in Will County. Home values are also higher here in Homer Glen. It's $304,000 versus $216 in the county. And then one particular age cohort in Homer Glen that's very significant. Since 2010, the population of age 65 plus or your senior citizens has grown about 48% in those 7 plus years, versus Will County, it's only grown about 28%. So that's very significant. In terms of new residential subdivisions, the only one that's been approved in the past 10 years is the Square at Goodings Grove, and that was in 2018. Keeping with that theme, in terms of residential permits, you can actually see in the table at the top that permits have gone down every year since 2016. It was at 76 residential permits in 2016, down to 10 through the end of September of this year. And that has actually had a major impact on the school district enrollments, especially the school district 33C. They've actually seen a flattening of their school enrollment, and that's because of the lack of residential growth here. Any increase that they actually have had an impact was because of a development in Lockport, the Sagebrook development. And there is some concerns in the school district that this flattening may continue well into the future. And then the final thing that I'll leave you with before turning it over to Con is just why support sustainable development. Here's just different ways to consider why it's good to consider it. One is greater housing and transportation options. Housing options, as we said, 89% of your housing stock is single-family detached, especially now that you want to consider life cycles of your residents. They want to be able to age in place, especially with the rising senior population. You want to make sure that they have greater diversity of housing options. And transportation options is providing more walkability and bikeability. Compact development, smaller lots is important to consider, and as well as housing design, especially with stuff like LEED certification, how to convert modern farmhouses, and the craftsman style architecture. Walkability, again, is a positive to consider for sustainable development. And two other things, reduced water consumption and greater energy efficiency are also often associated with sustainable development. And then in terms of the open space, the last 2 points, one is you have a greater efficiency of stormwater management, especially using naturalized landscaping, and then just preservation of open space and natural areas in your community, which is a good segue to give it to Con, and he'll first talk about the conservation design elements in your community.
Good evening. Building on the setup that Todd gave you with regard to some of the issues, some of the trends in the community that would give rise to some of the issues that we're going to talk about tonight, and potentially influence your decision with regard to how you want to move forward. We thought that was important, and also thanks BJ and his staff that helped us with some of that information. So of the items that are left for us as a team to review going forward as part of this process, there are three pieces. One is issues associated with the Conservation Design Code, issues associated with your tree preservation, although well aware of the fact that you have a separate committee working on that, a revised draft before you, and so I'm not going to be able to offer or really want to offer any significant changes to that, maybe a few observations as that committee continues its work. And all of this information ultimately will be summarized in a report in the coming
probably either later this year or early next year, depending on the timing. And then the last thing are some basic observations as you begin to think about adopting a landscape code, which I know we talked about before, some thoughts regarding things that we want to consider. So, with regard to conservation subdivisions, we need to, I think as a community, look and reevaluate the original purpose and what potential changes are being talked about and how that would potentially impact the use of this tool, if you will, going forward. And we want to look at better ways to advance sustainability and still promote growth. Quite frankly, I don't know of many other better ways than what you have attempted to do, although it has not been successful to date, but attempted to do through the conservation design approach. One I think is actually innovative. I don't know many communities apply it the way you do as a mandatory requirement versus something that would be applied on a optional basis chosen by the developer. One of which I have proposed in a couple other communities, and I think is something that certainly should be considered and not disappear. These are some things that you're already familiar with regard to what are the underlying principles under which conservation design is intended to accomplish. Obviously, preservation of open space resources, creating unified development, providing flexibility in the evaluation of projects that have unique resources associated with them. Of course, the overall purpose and the goal of the village is to preserve, if you will, this sense of a more open space community. So what does the current code say with regard to this, and what have been some of the issues that have arisen? Well, there's a couple standards that have been the lightning rod, I think one in particular, that have been in the lightning rod with regard to the application of conservation design and why it has worked. If you believe that it is a tool that should continue, then there's some suggested modifications. One has to do with the fact that you apply it only to projects 10 acres or larger, which is not bad. I think there could be an argument made that it could be applied to even 5 acres or larger lots. If the goal again is, and I think there was a famous 5-acre lot that took all its trees down. So if the goal is to preserve those resources and other critical open spaces, then why not consider something at a lower threshold? So I think that's a discussion that should be pursued. And then this other exception, conservation design is not required for projects that have 1.5 acres or greater in size. And I don't have a particular issue with that. I think that size lot, in most cases, not all, typically you don't, your house is not consuming the entire lot. In most cases, you're able to preserve the open space around it, although, well aware of the fact that there's at least one famous property that took all the trees down, even though they didn't need it to do so. So that's a related issue. Lot sizes is a significant issue, I believe, something for you to consider, particularly in light of some of the statistics that Todd gave you. If you believe, and I think there was a, I don't know what I call it, I don't call it a consensus, but at least an interest by many stakeholders we interviewed to consider more housing variety for the community on both age spectrums, both for young starter families and for folks in the older age spectrum, reducing lot sizes from the minimum now, it's 15 where it was before 12, going at least that size or lower, because we have approved some projects that are actually lower than that. I think is going to be an important part of something I'd suggest you consider as a part of the revamp of the conservation design approach. And I'll get into that in a little bit more. The requirements for percent minimum open space, I think, are legitimate. Obviously, you want to get on the back end something that's valuable to the community. And all I'm going to say about that is that it should not be in remnant spaces. And I know you do have some standards in place that talk about what the minimum width or size of an open space should be. But I think that is woefully insufficient in terms of what I think you should do in terms of, there's a graphic in there of subdivision that I think is maybe an example of what would potentially comply, but I don't think it necessarily meets
really what the intent is, at least my understanding of what you're trying to achieve as a community. Other communities where we may be potentially fine. And then, of course, as many of you already know, really light-rod issue associated with conservation design. And why we have not seen any, maybe except for one subdivision in the last 10 years, is the fact that the standard of having 90% of lots of abutting open space, you just can't do it. And there are a lot of good subdivisions, one we'll show you in a minute, that have achieved to a large extent what you want to achieve with the lots done. But quite frankly, in the number of similar codes that I've worked on and involved in conservation design work, I at least can't think of a community that has that provision in its code. So I think at minimum that has to go away. So there is some questions I think that have arisen with regard to net density and net acreage and what that means. Even at step level, we've had some discussion about the definition of what is net acreage. Net density is determined by what net acreage is. We apply the density permitted in that zoning district. If it's quarter-acre lots, then you apply the quarter-acre lot size to whatever the buildable area is, which is referred to as the net acreage. Your definition excludes many things from the net acreage. I think this deserves certainly more discussion. I don't know that the way the definition is currently structured, I have a significant problem with it, although I think there could be some tweaks, because if you look at the definition on the screen, the things that you can include as a part of the net acreage calculation are the things that a normal developer would have to exclude as a part of his development, would not get credit for, and would not get lots, right? I mean, you can't build in the floodplain, in the floodway, you have to provide stormwater detention. All these things are netted out, right? If it's a standard development. Park space, if you're required park space, your land cash ordinance requires set-asides. You're not going to get credit for that. In fact, you're going to have to give the land or pay money. Same thing with school sites, municipal sites, so forth. So, slopes greater than 12%, that's maybe the only one you can argue. I've seen some really nice development on slopes greater than 12%, so I don't know that that's necessarily, there should be a barrier. But I think there could be some adjustments to look at, but just so you know how this works. And roads, obviously, also netted out of the calculation. Roads get anywhere between 10 to 20% of a project. So that's how you get to what the net density is. General other considerations then, issues that we would be seeking some direction, some thought from the board at this time, in addition to the things that we've highlighted. Are there other potential hindrances to development in new residential subdivisions? Do you agree with some of the thoughts we have with regard to some of the changes that could be made to improve, in our opinion, improve the utilization of conservation design? Or do you have any other thoughts as to ways to modify it? Or do you like it the way it is? So, open for discussion.
I know my colleagues will find it hard to believe that I have a few things to say about this, but you were furiously writing as you were talking. You did a couple of things that Todd had started out with were, to me, the key of what the rest of this is kind of predicated on. The fact that our aging, a 48% increase in 65 and over population, and the flattening of the schools. We're talking about sustainable development. And those two things are not sustainable for a community. I mean, those are irresponsible in the long run. We don't do something about trying to reverse some of those trends. The flattening of the schools, we always hear about how is this going to impact the schools? We don't want to overcrowd the schools. If we don't feed those schools a steady diet of new families, new kids, we're going to end up with what happened in this community before I even got here 18 years ago, where they were closing schools. They were closing some of the grammar schools around here and consolidating. We're going to end up back in those types of things. My kids went through school, and they're older, they're in their 20s now, but there was a bubble that went through the high school, and the schools accommodate for things like that. So the school question and trying to put some development into our repertoire here, I think is really needed. And I think that's a hollow argument trying to hide behind what's this going to do to the schools. So I'm glad that was part of your laying down the beginning of this. As far as conservation design ordinance, I think that's been flawed since the beginning. I get why it happened. It's in 2006, whole different world back then. The economy was on fire. Will County was the fastest growing county in the country, I believe it was. And it still may be, doing pretty well. But, the inclination here was a new community. We were only 5 years old at the time. Slam on the brakes. Will County had been really giving it to us for a long time, letting people run rampant and do whatever they wanted. So this was a reaction to that. I get why this conservation design ordinance came about. In the kind of, you didn't use the word, and I won't put it in your mouth, but it's a draconian implementation of what probably started out as a good idea. Let's keep some open space. Let's make sure we're being responsible. But unfortunately, it was applied a little too hard and for a little too long. And I think that's netted out in the other piece of that part, that beginning part from Todd, where it says one new subdivision platted. And that's actually more than 10 years. I mean, it's been before 08, before we had one platted. We've finished a few since then. So to me, you also mentioned about, that we could even take CDO, the Conservation Design Ordinance, and go maybe even as low as 5 acres. I must say that kind of took me back. I was kind of like, we already killed a child in the crib. I mean, now what are we doing, working upstream here? I mean, that to me is not really the way to go on something like that. The mandatory requirements for the giving back of open space. I've always said that, when people argue about, the merits of conservation design, of this implementation of conservation design, I said, show it to me. Show me that a developer can come in here and make money. They have to make money. Money is not the evil here. They are entitled to a profit. They are developing something that is an asset for our community, and they should be welcomed with open arms, and we should be working with them. But they can never get off the back of Manhattan. They got 100 acres. They like you said, they net it out, and suddenly, by what they're being required to give back, give up as part of the parks, trying to keep things 90% abutting open spaces, they just can't get off the back of that net. So either they just abandon any hope of doing a project here, or they want to different municipalities. So, like I said, I have a lot of thoughts on conservation design, but those are just a few of my opening remarks.
We have 3 people in the audience who want to speak. Rich Kazelis, John Rogers, and John Gallagher. So, Rich, if you want to start.
Well, good evening, everybody. My name is Rich Kazeris. I am a director of the National Land Group for Marks & Millichap. We're a national real estate company with close to 2,000 agents across the country, representing about over 9,000 transactions a year, multiple different product types, land, obviously, retail, commercial, office, industrial, all the main product groups that we work through. And with 9,000 transactions, we think that gives us some credibility in terms of knowing what the current state of the market is. And me myself, I've been in the land business in Will County and in the Chicago area for over 30 years. Done projects all over Will County. Unfortunately, Homer Glen isn't one of them, despite the fact that I have clients that have property here. And all the things that I'm hearing tonight, and your comments, sir, recently, are the reason why. We have a code and different easements, tree easements, conservation easements that are counterproductive when it comes to be able to build at a price point that people can afford today. We have a couple of things working against us. We have a millennial group that has been slow in household formation. They're just now starting to get into household formations, which creates demand. But what kind of demand is that? Well, I can tell you, it's not necessarily in for sale housing. This group is more experiential. They're looking for not making long-term commitments. They're looking to rent. So that's working against us, and that's the first domino in a community that you need to have the entry-level housing, because it's those folks that buy the next house. As they go and have kids, they need a bigger house, and it keeps the whole domino going, so that you create a market for all your housing types and for all your houses, from 200,000 or 300,000 up to $1 million. So you want to have those people that want to stay in town can stay and grow within the community. And at the same time, you know, and to your point also, sir, there's nothing here for people that want to downsize. Where are you going to go? I mean, somebody have an answer for me? You go up to Lamont and Beach Hills, new development up there that they're doing pretty well with. I sold a project in Burr Ridge to McNaughton, who's almost sold out on age-targeted product. But it doesn't meet any of your codes. Your entry level doesn't meet any of your codes. You have no multifamily code that works. So I think I applaud you for taking a look at all these things, because the developer community, I've done business with all the national home builders, some of the bigger private home builders, it's all the same thing. Why would I want to go to Homer Glen and spend my time and money to get to the city council and get turned down in my homes? And I only know how to be honest here, folks. So if I'm being direct, it's because that's the only way I know how to talk to people. So, but I think you've got to start with some good things here. I think you have some great comments from good consultants here. But the bottom line is about economics. I don't care about conservation easement. I don't care about any of this other stuff. It's great. It's great to talk about, and I think it needs to be a part of the equation. But when it comes down to is economics. Okay, bottom line. Lot sizes. What determines the cost of a home? Lot size, front footage. That determines the greatest cost of the home. Open space requirements, school donations, fees. All those things increase the cost of the home. So we need to roll out to the development community, and I'm willing to help however I can. That's why I'm here to say, look, the red carpet is out. We're pro-development. What do we need to get you there? Tell us what you need. That's what they want to hear. Because right now, you know, they're thinking that you're still back in 2006. And I understand why you did that in 2006, different time. Things were crazy. I did all I could do to keep land in front of these guys, especially the west side of Joliet. Some of you are familiar with the Cape Farm Road corridor. So 5,000 acres there. And part of the reason why they went there is because Joliet was aggressive. They put in effect, a $500 per acre max on impact fees. That alone saved about $4,000 a house. So, I mean, it's things like that. We need to be creative. We need to roll out the red carpet. Tell us what we need. And we need to hear that from them, not from me, not from these guys who are good at what they do. We need to know, what does the developer community want? And where do they want it, and how do we give it to them? So once we prime that well, once we turn that first down over, then things start to roll, right? But we got to get a start. We got to be aggressive. So those are my thoughts. I think that's a good start here. Like I said, I applaud you for having these conversations, but I think we got to do it. We can't just talk about it. So, here to answer any questions.
May I ask a question?
Yes.
What is the economic model that supports your theory? Where have you factored in the longer-term population projections for when the statistics are coming from 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now? Do we understand how that impacts the supply and demand, and then how that supply and demand impacts the property values that we have? So that when in 20, 30 years from now, when we have built these homes, and people have come in and they purchase them, and then either the population stabilizes or people decide they want to go somewhere else, and then there's vacancies, and then you can't, just like with the commercial, on the commercial side, right? How?
I'm sorry, I think we have a sign-up sheet for this section.
Oh, I can't go through it, I'm sorry, I didn't give it a sign-up sheet.
Yeah, sorry.
But just curious, I'll be quiet.
No, I'm happy to
I'll
give
take it
you.
offline, I'd like to understand the
I'd be
economic
happy
model.
to give you my card and we can have a conversation.
All right. Is there anyone else on the panel here that wants to ask a question?
I would just say I appreciate the feedback. These are the types of discussions that we've been having as part of community economic development for several years now. Lots of the data that we're looking at tonight is data that's been brought before us, even when Trustee Gray was a volunteer as a CD committee. So I'm glad he was paying attention, because lots of that was helpful. But talking about for a while, and the important thing, and some of the discussions we have within CED take into account. We've got realtors on that committee, we've got various backgrounds within the community on that committee, and these are things that we have consistently heard. So I would just say thank you for the feedback. We want to hear all sides of this debate as we make decisions.
And I'm going to add one thing. I mean, the fact that you don't levy a property tax and your growth opportunity to grow revenues is obviously through sales tax revenue. And the only way we're going to get there is more rooftops, you know, because that's what the retailers are looking for. I'm doing a number of projects all over Chicago on a retail basis, and I'm going to tell you, you know, the developers will build. It's not the developers that's the issue. It's the tenants, the retailers. They're very, very cautious right now. They're only going in 8 locations. You know, I've been working on a couple of projects for over a year, in projects that are in high density, you know, high traffic areas. So it's hard enough, you know, to get those deals done, but if you want to build yourself a sustainable community that now takes in different product types, different lot sizes, different housing, it's all going to benefit you to the ability to start being able to attract some retail components other than 143rd and Bell. I mean, you got this beautiful 159th Street, just built, or almost finished, right? All it is going to be right now is a conduit to get from Orland Park to 355. Why is somebody going to stop? Where are they going to stop? So I think it's kind of a balance. But again, I think you got to start somewhere. You need that first match to start the fire, and I think you got to come out strong. Okay?
Thank you, Rich.
All right. Yes.
Sorry, I just have one question for you.
For me?
Yeah, over here. Hi. So if you had some land that you could build some homes on, and you're gearing it towards millennials, what style of home, what kind of home would you say would fit to get millennials in?
Well,
and at what cost?
Yeah. So, in a general sense, it's almost near impossible to build a single-family detached home for much less than $300,000 today, just because of the cost of construction. Forget about infrastructure, which you guys have done a great job. I mean, you've extended the water and sewer. There's properties right now, property that I represent right now is ready to go. I mean, it'd be a perfect first spot. So, you know, they're not looking for a big house. They're not looking for a big lot. They're looking for, as I said, they're experiential. They want an efficient house. They want open floor plans. And they have to find a house that, based on their income and whether or not they have student loan debt or whatever, all those things come into play.
So if you could be more specific, what's considered a millennial size house?
I would say, you know, 3-bedroom, 2-bath, you know, call it as small as you can get that kind of thing in there, you know, 1,800 feet up to, you know, 2,000, 2,200.
2,600.
Yeah, 2,600 would be a really good size house.
And then at what price range would you say?
Well, I think the hard cost of construction today, even with some of the major national home builders, is probably about, call it $80 a foot. Just hard cost to build it. Then you got your lot costs and your land costs and all of that. So you say, you know, depending on what densities are allowed, what lot sizes are allowed, you know, I think on an average you're probably going to see, like, if I were to say like Plainfield, for example, would be the closest area that's actually having some construction. Joliet's pretty much dead. I mean, not much different than here, but I would say like 75,000 a lot. So you start adding up all that, you're up, you know, around 250,000. Plus that doesn't include any carry. You know, there's building permits and.
You're up to 283,000 if you put a $75,000 lot and $280,000
There you
lot,
go.
let's just say.
Yep. So it's hard.
What's that in? So I just built a home a year ago.
Mm-hmm.
A 3-bedroom, 2-bath,
Mhm.
2,600 square foot.
Yep.
Just like you said.
Yep.
It
How
cost me
far
about
off was that?
$425,000,
Right.
not including the lot.
Right.
So I'm at about $500,000 for my home.
Right.
You're talking about a millennial-sized home
Right.
in Homer Glen.
Right.
So you're thinking of a home about $283,000. So what kind of home is that going to be? I mean, mine's brick. Are you looking at siding? What's going to bring it down $300,000 or $200,000?
That's part of it, the brick. Yep, trying to achieve a land plan that can be efficient enough to meet all the ordinances, like the 90% to open space. You know, that makes it very difficult because it's the efficiency of the plan. Double-sided, just a double-sided street, for example, where you can build homes on both sides, incrementally, greatly affects the affordability of homes because it's not just an efficient house, but an efficient plan. How you manage the detention and where the detention goes. And the open space requirements become very important. So, I mean, if you look at a conservation design, for example, where you get credit for those open spaces in terms of how you calculate density, that's another area where you can get increased density based on a smaller lot size and still meet your codes. So all of these things come together in terms of how you can best do it. Because bricks and sticks are going to cost what they are. Now you have the ability to mandate certain architectural requirements, brick all the way around, you know, that's an increased cost, you know, as opposed to base brick, you know, concrete driveways instead of asphalt driveways. I mean, every few $100 or every $1,000 adds up and up and up and up. So the other way you can do it is to go to more of a townhome design where you can get a better density, where you're getting some more efficiencies of getting somebody an attached home, which could be more affordable than a detached home, for example. So those are other ways that you can do it.
I was just curious as to what your thoughts were on lowering the actual building costs or actually, you know, lowering the tax value.
Right, yeah. Well, those are some ways that you can do it. There's probably others, but again, even things like roof pitch makes a difference. You know, there's a lot of different hard costs that can be addressed in the building process, but it would involve, you know, some changes in the way that you guys are doing things now.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Thank you. Thank you, Rich.
Yep.
Appreciate it. John Rogers?
Hi, Mr. Mayor, trustees. My name is John Rogers. I'm a real estate developer, a former Homer Glen resident, and a current landowner in the village. Back previous administration, about the time that we were going over the 2006 ordinance, we planned a large master planned community on the 159th Street corridor prior to the widening of the road. I just applaud the village for their strides in entertaining and I think making changes to the code, or at least entertaining changes that deal with the new reality. Since 2006, I've built several hundred homes and built 600,000 square feet of retail, not in the village, but in areas where the density was greater, where there was it's not so much a conservation design or something I keep hearing about lot sizes or housing stock, but it's doing those things both within the comprehensive plan and then as a municipality or as a village to encourage people of every single age, of every income group, to make it a vibrant community. I certainly wouldn't want to speak ill of any of our neighbors, some of the communities that have focused on being a bedroom community to having all single-family homes, and during the crash when everybody's house is $900,000 and everybody tries to sell at the same time, they don't seem to all clear at $900,000. So I'm happy to just got called into this process within the last month. I just couldn't be more pleased that all the strides that the village is making. Comments are absolutely correct that it's a wonderful thing that of all the infrastructure in terms of getting in front of water, of dealing with schools, and of roads. So couldn't be more pleased, and I'm happy, whether at the staff level, to provide any incremental comments I can, but thank you very much.
Thank you, John.
Geller?
Mayor and trustees, thank you for inviting me. I think Rich did a great job telling you what's going on in the market. I've had personal experience talking to people about the land we own and trying to find uses for it. And I shared with the mayor, I don't know, a month or so ago, I've had a couple people recently tell me Homer Glen is closed for business. The Nationals don't want to come here. And the Nationals are really, I mean, I'd love to be building 400 homes a year again. It's not happening. So this year, I don't think we built a home in Homer Glen, which is really unfortunate. And coming here, I didn't know what your permit numbers were, but I see they're 10. The whole market is depressed. I think Rich would tell you that. There are local areas that are doing well. You mentioned a piece in Burr Ridge that's done very well in the last year and a half.
I would give you the historical number of new homes in the Chicago area, and this is a historical average, is around 22,000 new homes a year in the Chicago metro area. In the heyday, 2005, 2006, we got over 30,000 homes. There were several developers doing over 1,000 homes a year, some 1,500 homes a year. I would tell you since 2008, we haven't been over 5,000 or 6,000 homes. That gives you some perspective. And here's the thing, I think you as a community are in an enviable position to be able to control your own destiny. You have the land, you have the infrastructure, you have the ability to make decisions as a group and to let the developers know that you're open for business. And it's not that they don't want to come here. Mr. Gallagher is correct. They just feel like they have better spending their time elsewhere. You have everything you need here. You're close to transportation. You've got some retail. You've got a great start here. Okay, but we've got to let the community know that you're open for business. And the only way to do that, as I said, is you got to be aggressive and you got to go after the business because it's not going to come to you without doing that.
The housing mix is different too. And you talk to that.
Yeah.
Apartments, the kids want apartments, and you've got to be open to it. We're working on a deal with an apartment developer. The rents aren't cheap. It's not junk. I think you just need to be very open to a lot of different product. The empty nester product that might be on a 5,000 or 6,000 square foot level. And maybe without brick all the way around. The retiree, that would be a 18 to 2,600 square foot house with decent amenities inside, a little less yard. It would, in my mind, it's a detached townhouse. Everybody has a little bit of side yard. But it's not going to happen on 15,000 square foot lots. It's not happening for us on 10,000 square foot lots. So, and I may have the smallest lots of Homer Glen at the moment. So, that's all. Thank you very much for your time. I'm very happy to hear you're at least considering difference.
Thank you, Jim.
Thank you.
Any questions for?
You don't have any questions?
There's one more that would like to speak, so if you want to come up. She's in real estate too. All yours, Mike.
Thank you. I'll be honest, I'm a little intimidated. This is my first time talking. I have talked to some of you directly, personally met with you. Yes, I'm a real estate agent for Coldwell Banker, but I am also a Homer resident.
I'm sorry, can you please restate your name, sir?
I'm Willis. I am a Homer resident. I have been for 21 years. We have been a business owner. We've owned multiple businesses in the area. and in Lockport. So I kind of have a small business passion as well for people. And I just wanted to, I had a couple points, well, like 18 points, and I'm just going to make comments on all of them. And it's based on some conversations that I've had with developers. I do have several vacant properties for sale on 159th Street that I have listed. Not mine personally, but I represent sellers. I did have one property on Jensen, the Jensen parcel, which was on 159th Street. And this was a couple years ago. I had a well-qualified developer that was very successful that came in and wanted to put a development on 159th Street. He did go back and forth. We did not get past the planning commission when we did this. He did have open conversation, conservation areas. He accommodated a couple different housing options. The problem with our parcel was it was only 657 feet wide, and then it was almost 2,000 feet deep. So that was kind of an issue that we had. So the problem that he had was the design. He was more of a grid instead of a curved street, which was impossible. At that time, he tried to buy both parcels on the east and west side and could not. They weren't selling at that time. So he was stuck with that. And he did have open space. He was even going to put a pedestrian bridge across to Fighting Creek to the backside for pedestrians, which is now, from what I understand, we sold it to you and is now forest preserve. So one of the things I want to say is I'm very passionate. I'm not just about the real estate deal on this. I live literally 159th Street. My subdivision backs up to 159th Street. So anything that goes on 159th Street, I'm going to be directly affected by it. I have been working a lot with Janie Patch in the probably 4 years or 5 years that I've been doing this, 6 years, and I have put a lot of attention and a lot of time into wanting to see development on 159th Street. Some of the comments that I wanted to see is, one, when someone does want to buy land, is sometimes we got to look at the physical land capabilities of what they are able to do. People walk away if they only have so much land. There's only the width someone had brought up. They have to be able to accommodate and do what they need to do. Developers do need to make a profit. Everybody's in the business. Everybody works for a profit. That's what they need to do. So in order for a developer to pass on savings to a home buyer, they got to be able to save on the front end of it, and that does mean smaller lot sizes. Quantity doesn't mean that you forego quality. And I think there's a lot of subdivisions, a lot of areas in towns where they have smaller lot sizes, but they have very well quality homes. So, and I'm kind of surprised that a little bit, I do find that young buyers, they can afford a little bit more than what we think. I think I'm impressed lately with what I find out, that they can afford a $350,000 house to a $400,000 house. And I find that we have retired people. I've worked with several people who have retired, who are Homer Glen residents. I'm looking to be one of those myself. They have 35 plus square foot homes with 1.5 acre lots, and they want to stay in Homer Glen, but there's no place for them to go. We need ranch style townhouses. We need something here that keeps our Homer residents in. We need to bring in the new ones, just like you said, the new buyers, the young buyers. Not just the young buyers, the first time home buyers, but also those that have kids that are 2 and 3, 5 years old. Homer Glen, I'm excited to hear that there's a possibility that we have a sports complex. That's going to bring young families to Homer Glen. So I'm pretty excited about that. It's too late for my boys. We had to go outside of Homer Glen for some of these things because it wasn't offered here. So that's going to be a great asset to bring families in. The commercial areas, yes, I agree. Every commercial, I challenge anybody that says that commercial restaurants do not want density, call them, talk to them. I have talked to several of them, and they will not come unless there is some type of density in the area. One of the things that was, one of the comments during conversation was the fact that they want Homer Glen to be a dark city. 159th Street is going to be lit up no matter what. Make it districts. Make districts and make those districts, maybe along 159th Street, to be a little lax in what you require as far as homes. Maybe that's where you do your condos. Maybe that's where you do your townhouses. Maybe that's where you do it. Try it out in a place that's already going to be lit. There's a big area of Homer Glen that's already dark. This is not going to be. This is where we're going to have progress. We've got to validate the expense of the water and sewer. That's how we're going to do it, is bringing those commercials. I know commercial property, you guys want it to be 500 feet deep. My thing is, I've talked to a couple different commercial people and they want to go 250 feet deep. That's something that we need to look at. Are we going to have some commercial that's going to be so big and Amazon takes over and they don't fill those bigger commercial places? We can have nice quality 2 and 3 unit, and I don't want to call them strip malls because I think that kind of downplays what they are. We can have them be quality, little boutique, White House, black market stores, things like that. They can be done and you guys can control how they build and what they look like. Smaller lots equal less taxes, but you can still do larger homes. Love to see Homer Glen to be a destination area. Love to see that. Sports complex to be something like that. I think that if we were to bring these houses in, we could make Homer Glen that destination area. I hope that we don't miss the opportunity that we have with 159th Street. This is the prime time. We don't want commercial to pass us up. We don't want residential to pass us up. We want to be able to build while the iron is hot. I know there are some concerns with 151st Street residents because they feel that the lighting or whatever. I'll be honest with you, from what I see with some 151st Street residents compared to 159th Street, there is a huge buffer of a forest that's there. I don't think they're going to be affected by any lighting or any commercial or anything that's going to be there. I hope that we can find some place for light industrial, for those blue collar workers who have plumbing businesses, who have landscaping businesses, who have those type of businesses. With some of the depths of some of these properties that we have, I don't see why we couldn't make some of those areas more like an opportunity for them to keep their business or bring their business in Homer Glen. Disrespect. Yes, the rumors about Homer Glen. Unfortunately, my husband is a contractor. He has spoke to a lot of different types of contractors outside. Homer Glen does have a rumor of a bad reputation of being able to build or develop here that we need to change. And I think it can be changed. It's just a matter of something that we do up here as far as, I think what this gentleman was talking about. So one of the things that buyers, when they come in, they don't just look in, their searches aren't just here. They're everywhere. They look in New Lenox, they look in Lamont, they look in Homer, they look in Lockport. So unfortunately, we don't have anything here that is saying, no, I need to be in Homer Glen. And that's what I think we need to try to find to develop. We need to bring conveniences to our residents. And conveniences means commercial. And commercial means some type of density. And that's pretty much what I have to say. So I just want to make those points. Thank you.
Thanks, Connie. Okay.
Mr. Mayor, I just kind of wanted to touch on some of the thoughts that were raised. In August of 2007, roughly 4 months after a new administration took over, the exemption to the conservation design ordinance that exempted properties within, I believe it's like roughly 1,100 square feet in from 159, that exemption was removed. It did not go before the Environment Committee before the decision was made. There was really no explanation. They just decided that was a good thing to do. That same area was designated on the comprehensive plan as suitable for multifamily housing. So how are we going to do both at the same time? I don't understand the rationale for removing that exemption at the time. I think it should be put back or something along those same lines. I just don't see how it's possible. And I think it was sort of a campaign promise fulfilled at the time because that particular administration ran on an anti-development platform from beginning to finish. And they succeeded. And so here we are, 12 years later, with nothing else. So I would like to see that. And touching on a couple of those sentiments expressed about empty nesters, I myself am downsizing, and I'm looking at, for me, roughly 30 potential properties that I can afford or that is suitable for me. And I don't necessarily want maintenance-free, like detached with a side yard. I would like to see even more of that. I definitely think we need ranch townhomes, for sure, and I know I'm not alone now. So, thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Any more questions or?
Well, we do have some more material to go through. We touched on a lot of the core issues, quite frankly, and I know it's getting late, so I don't want to belabor this presentation, but if you give me a few more minutes and a few more slides to flip through, or we can just talk about the issues that you want to talk about. If there's anything else, that's entirely up to you, because I realize it's maybe getting quite a little bit.
I think this is important stuff.
Yes.
And we're
All
here.
right.
Let's keep going.
Well, let's try to do it quickly then. So these are just some examples. Going back, this is the South Point the staff has given us. Quite frankly, I think it meets all the bells and whistles. It has, what was it, 40% or 40 acres of contiguous open space, and I think that no reason, in my opinion, that should have been considered to be a very good conservation design. Problem, didn't have that, couldn't meet that 90% threshold. This is another example of conservation design where I guess you would say all the lots, almost all of them up front on some kind of open space. So does it meet that standard? It does. Although some of the open spaces I perceive is actually detention, so it's required anyway. But my thought is, if you look at the two, this is just my opinion, when you get 40 acres of continuous space, and my guess is I don't know this property, but if it's woodlands and other natural resources, it's a big win versus remnant spaces in this development, although it meets all the standards. And when you do this one, and you look at the next one, and you start to map where those resources are, and what you want to protect, and this falls perfectly in line with your tree preservation goals, that's real preservation. That's really the opportunity. Less focused on trying to preserve every individual lot. This is where you're going to get your home run. And you lost a lot less headache to do it, quite frankly. This is another example of a project in Woodstock. This, you probably can barely see it as I can, but it looks like we have a mix, again, of housing types within a project. That's the other beauty of a conservation approach. And if I'm the developer and I've worked with many, they like the fact that they don't have one program to sell. They can respond, be flexible to a market. They can do some cluster housing, as is, well, I use the pointer, but you can't see it. Up in the left part, and that really is more of an age-targeted kind of a product, a maintenance-free, and then you have more traditional homes all kind of mixed together. This is a more example of a development right off the 159th corridor, about 20% in Orland Park preserved. A denser development, but adjacent, and as a transition to commercial, I think is in line with one of the trustees here had mentioned about appropriate development as a transition, but still complies with at least the minimum threshold for open space, so that it's possible you can do both and still have housing variety within the community. And again, none of what I'm saying is necessarily to suggest that we're covering the entire community, north to south, east to west, with high-density development. Conservation design always respects the underlying density of the area, right? So in very plain English, if you have a 10-acre site and you get 10 one-acre lots on that site per zoning, that's your density, right? Assuming, right, you have all the other, but just assume it's just completely clean land. And you can go to half-acre lots, and then you preserve the remaining 5 acres, or 50% in open space. And that's as simple as it is, and that's really what we're, I think the whole goal is in terms of achieving. But the point of that statement is it doesn't change. So if you're in the south part of town or another part of town with minimum 1 acre densities, that hasn't changed, right? The only thing we're doing, it's a trade-off. Reducing lot size and trade for permanent open space. And I think I really do think it's a much superior approach to development. Years ago, we used to call this smart growth. I don't know if that's still a term out there, in many terms. Sustainable development, smart growth, it goes round and round, but all pointing back to the same idea. Alternative approaches to preserving open space. If you didn't take this approach, what would they be? There's ideas here about why we want to have sustainable-minded communities and what compact development and walkability and all these other things. We talk about sustainability in our community. communities. And you talk about those in your plan, how they can be achieved with these kind of approaches. There are other mechanisms, certainly. I'm familiar with the Variance area communities, if you know of northwest the Chicago area, where there are 5-acre minimum lot sizes, and they have an approach to preserve open space even in those areas where owners can deed areas of their property and get a tax benefit as a part of a conservation easement. They can put restrictive covenants, which is usually part and parcel of these conservation areas. And then homeowners, developers certainly can take over management of these larger open spaces when they're created, where in most cases when you have remnant pieces of larger lots, either subject to change or there's really not lack of maintenance taken care of. I think we've talked about a couple of these ideas already, kicked around the idea of even allowing smaller lots and different types of products within conservation design and beyond what was your minimum 12, now 15. So that's it on conservation. As I mentioned before, I want to stop here and take a minute just to see if there's any other issues or comments with regard to the conservation issue. Go back one?
Yeah.
So there are obviously some other thoughts, although very quick, on tree preservation landscapes. So we went through those pretty quickly, but I know this is one of the bigger ones. And, so if there's any other comments or questions regarding some of these bullet points, happy to talk about them some more.
I would say for the last couple of years, we have tried to look into changing some of the things that are here to where it's not a big night and day difference. I mean, we do have a village that a lot of people do like. We have a ton of open land here. We have tried to get different size buildings in, townhomes. We had mentioned condos. There's a whole bunch of things if you want to bring people in here. And we have the area, at least right now, that we could set aside certain areas for smaller buildings, smaller lots. You could still have where you have big lots. So we have the look here for anything you want, you can have it. Mr. Gallagher's got a ton of property here it's spread out through the whole village, so you don't have to go to one area and just build that up. I think the problem that we've had is there is a lot of people that don't want that growth. But I would say at this point, then buy the property, then you can do whatever you want. They have a right to build. We have a right to keep the people here in this village. Because the way it is right now, it looks like Bonnie had said, there's really nowhere I can go right now other than get out of Homer Glen for the house that I'm in. I still have dogs and we have to have a yard for it. So townhouses are out for me. And there's really no small houses. We don't have ranches. I'm getting older. I don't want a two-story anymore. I want a ranch. So I think what we have to do as a board, and I know we have it in us, let's start looking into what we can do. And let's start moving. There's sometimes that we cave to a few. We need to do something different. I don't want to build the whole place out. I don't want it wall to wall. And I hate saying it, but I don't want to be a part of it. So you have a chance to, we have a chance right now. And you know what? I think we should just start working on it and go from there. So is there anything else from anyone?
We just have a few remaining slides that we did promise to address: tree preservation, landscape. We don't have a whole lot to say, so we'll take another 5 minutes hopefully. Again, our charge in our contract and our scope is to review the work that the environmental committee has already done and the changes that they've already made, and then also to evaluate the impacts of that code on the commercial corridors. Someone certainly mentioned the impact of the lighting. Code tree preservation doesn't have any kind of similar impact with regard to discouraging development or being some kind of barrier, right? So that's something we're going to look at. Lowering the threshold of preservation for individual lots is certainly something that's being considered. again, I would argue, I believe, back to my earlier statement, don't get so hung up on the size of the individual lot. If you focus and implement and do put in place a good conservation ordinance and really move that forward, I think there's your really opportunity to really do significant preservation. Much harder to maintain and track, and was it 6 months ago the committee met and I listened in on that conversation, a lot of concern about regulating individual homeowners and their ability to move trees around, cut trees down, and dictate that, how you're going to monitor it, all the issues associated with it. So, what would that mean? Prioritization of tree preservation areas potentially, where you want to identify where you want to preserve areas, create an overlay zone, make sure that those are preserved in continuity, rather than getting too hung up on every individual tree and each individual lot. That's just a thought. Regarding landscape standards, a number of things. Landscaping and site plan review is becoming more and more common amongst communities, so this is a best practice. A community like yours that doesn't have it certainly has done a good job. I would say looking at other communities that have done better jobs, you can, bottom line, when I drive a community, say, wow, what's really different about this place, whatever you like about it. And quite frankly, for me, it always comes down to the landscape of projects. The setbacks, the berms, the maturity of the trees, the variety of the type of landscaping, those really set apart X community from Y community. And so I think this is a big deal, and I think I wouldn't be shy from putting some good standards in place. Again, it's a balancing act. We don't want to discourage development. But, I always felt, my experience is quality begets quality. And when you establish standards of high quality, that tends to bring in better development over time. Sure, you're going to get pushback from the first guy, the first development, that's different from the last guy you did, right? I mean, everyone's going to complain, well, Joe didn't do it, now you're making me put in a 50-foot landscape buffer. So that's going to be difficult conversation. Transition always is, but I think this is a right approach. So, whoops, wrong one. So these are the things, real quickly, that we recommend be at minimum considered as a part of your landscape code. I'm not going to read them, but to know that these will be something that we'll be bringing back to you and identifying other things that we suggest, if you will, other kind of best practices that should be done. And again, I think there's an opportunity here to do this in concert with your other objectives, with open space, with tree preservation. I think they all kind of can coordinate and work together if done well.
I have a quick question for you while around landscaping. Is having a more robust landscape ordinance, where we're really dialed in on things that we want to see and levels that we want to accomplish, is that something that can help us maybe get to a relaxation on some of our other standards, full brick, things like that, that are going to drive up the prices of development of homes, but might offset that? And maybe some of the real estate.
I think that's a fair comment. I think there could be an interesting trade-off, where there might be some compromise. Yeah, I think that's an interesting approach. Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Well, I think that's it.
I just wanted to
We have one more.
on the tree preservation discussion. When we had that workshop, I felt like more time needed to be allotted for that discussion. I feel like it kind of went off on some tangents that got us off topic. And I feel like the information as a whole, as it was presented, was really insightful and valuable and should be looked at further. But we tended to get off into other side conversations, and it kind of detracted from what I kind of interpreted their objective to be. So I would like to have more discussion on that. That's all.
All right. Well, we can get all these things set up. Okay. All right, is there anything else?
I think we're done. I think the last area is really not particularly directly relevant to code issues. This had to do with the streetscape standards. Your indoor branding and wayfinding and programs is something that obviously the community needs to pay attention to. So we have a whole lot to offer in that regard. And then this is the schedule moving forward. So a sense of where we're going to be. And, Next big event is to review the design guidelines report, not drafting new code language, but summarizing much of the content, your comments, and hopefully giving you some direction so that when you do have that conversation in the next round of tree preservation, you begin the landscape code, you have some guidelines in place to give some direction that hopefully you as a board will bless to give staff direction. Thank you.
Aaron, I can just quickly say, part of the comp plan review steering committee, I think the board appreciates this, but just a reminder of it. Staff has put in a ton of work and hours into what leads up into these steering committee meetings. That is not normal course of business. This is all an add-on. But this all directly relates to our strategic plan, which we went through last year. And the topics we're talking about tonight, from a growth perspective, right? A couple of our goals in growth was diverse housing stock. It was open space. They're not mutually exclusive. So I think all of this is a push towards what we set out last year as part of our strategic plan within this realm. So staff has put in a ton of time on this. The consultants here have done, in my opinion, a great job. The meetings are focused and the information has been very valuable. And I would also say just a quick thank you to Beth Burton in the back of the room from Plan Commission, who was part of that steering committee and has put in a number of hours and given up time in the middle of the day also to help this process move forward. So
The Brock's back there too.
and Brock, yeah. And so this is a massive team effort, but I think it is moving in the right direction, and I think the point's been made. Where I disagree a little bit, I agree with Trustee Gray in that when you go back to when conservation design was implemented, whether it was a campaign promise or whatever it was at the time, I've always viewed it, and I've said this at CED, I've said it this meeting, if you put yourself at the time of 05 and 06 in the middle of that market and what was going on in a town that was a couple of years old, I can't tell you if I was sitting here, I wouldn't have voted for that. I think it was out of fear, it was out of an attempt, I believe, an honest attempt to control growth. But that said, so I think the motives were sincere and pure, and I think it was just a different time. That said, I think we have to be honest with ourselves and look at that, although none of us were here at the time, and say, look, the proof is in the pudding, right? It's been more than a decade, and if the goal was to stop growth, which I don't believe the goal was at the time, but if that was the goal, well then, or if any town is looking to stop residential growth, we have the ordinance to offer that, and we'll hand it over for free, right? And I know that wasn't the intent, but that is the practical effect of that, and I think this effort to take an honest look at that and hear honest feedback of people that aren't looking to be, look, we take it all, I know we take it personal, I know the time and effort we put into this and staff puts into this, and it's hard not to take some of these comments personal, but they're honest feedback, and it's good for us to hear and keep this process moving forward, and not be afraid to be more flexible on some of these things to attract that development that I think we're on our way to being on that path for. So just a thank you to everybody for the time and effort that's been put into this so far.
Yes.
Yes.
I just wanted to clarify one thing. You referenced Trustee Gray, but you mentioned my words. The campaign promise was something I said. And I wasn't talking about the conservation design ordinance. I think it was very well intentioned, and I think we all probably would have voted along the same lines at that time. I was mentioning specifically the exemption for the property along 159th that was removed over a year and a half later without any kind of explanation or pre-discussion. That's specifically what I was talking about.
Yeah, I'm certainly not defending that. Again, I don't think it was ever meant to, knowing the people that were on the board at the time, I don't think it was meant to stop growth. It was meant, we've said it, and Trustee Gray used the reference that we've used in CED. They pulled the emergency brake. It's what they did, and the emergency brake has been on, and at times I think we get caught up, and I say this in a general sense, in that any change is not releasing the emergency brake, it's hitting the gas pedal, and that's not what this is. This is saying, let's release the emergency brake, and let's ride here, and let's get forward motion. And that's.
And I would agree with what Bonnie said. the time is of the essence here because you look at what happened when they did Route 30 in Lennox and how then that just kind of exploded and the timing of that was just so perfect because it was after 08, you know, so people were, some of the lots were already planned and developed, but now, even to this day, it's still exploding. I mean, it is just going crazy, and that's our 159th Street. And so I just believe that time is of the essence, and we need to be on this sooner rather than later. And I'd also like to see these kind of workshops, their own workshops, so that we aren't, you know, feel like we're at the end of the night trying to press for time or pushing people to see it as its own separate workshop. And also to expedite it, so we're not waiting until November 13th if we don't have to. We can do it the week before, whatever the case may be.
Mayor, one last thing, I'm sorry, but in reference to Lennox, part of the data that we talked about in some of the comparables in CED, one of the important ones that wasn't mentioned, but I think is important, and Lennox is the example on this. If you go back, not even 10 years, but if you go back 11, 12, our average household income was significantly higher than New Lennox, for our neighbor, right? And that over the last 7 or 8 years has flipped. And they are now, to the degree that we were $8,000, $9,000, $10,000 average household income higher than New Lennox, that has now flipped. Ours has gone down and theirs is going up. And these are all the symptoms of something that I'm excited that we're addressing.
I agree. All right, is there any old business? Is there any new business? There will be no executive session tonight. You don't need. You okay with that? Sure. I need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Siri says no. All right, meeting's adjourned.